strings tangled loose and frayed, screens built in where hope once stayed. Code whispers secrets deep in the night, tech warriors battle fading light. Carey and Doug with the wisdom they bring, sparks fly sharp like a pendulum swing. Through the noise, the truth they find, fixing the world one bite at a time. Hum low, circuit screen pain, motherboards cracked, it's a tech domain. Challenges rise like ghosts in the air, but they've got answers, they're fully aware. Carey and Doug with the wisdom they bring, sparks fly sharp like a pendulum swing. Through the noise, the truth they find, fixing the world one bite at a time. Carey and Doug with the wisdom they bring, sparks fly sharp like a pendulum swing. Through the noise, the truth they find, fixing the world one bite at a time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today, it's the 9th of July, 2025. It's Wednesday. I'm Carey Holzman, and joining me today, a good friend of the channel and a great channel of his own, it's Mr. DougBetts. There he is. Welcome in, Doug.
Hello, Carey.
I saw you over there shadow boxing during the
intro. That song was great. I was getting into that jamming.
Oh, I thought you were just visualizing punching me in the face.
No, it was a song. I mean, with the visuals in that song, you got to go with the dance move that involves fists.
Well, we got the music courtesy of AI and the graphic animation with Mara AI.
Okay.
All right, let's try something different. Let me go to this here. Here we go. Hey, it's been a little while. Anything new happening, exciting happening since our last visit?
Oh, my whole world has turned upside down since our last visit. Our last visit, I was still in my regular routine schedule of live streaming 6 days a week, and I put some severe brakes on that. I'm down to 1 or 2 days a week, kind of calling it my summer schedule. But I got to a point during a 2-week period where I was just, totally stressed and overwhelmed with the number of things that were on my list to do, and realizing that I'm not getting these done. I've got to find me some more time somewhere. And then also having some technical issues with my production and wanting to actually revamp my whole production. So I've got like a massive to-do list. And then also, of course, I have the opportunity to use the cabin a couple days a week during the week through the summer. And I want very much to do that. So the only way that I could free things up and see my way around it is to temporarily reduce my live streaming schedule. Some people might wonder if that sets my channel back. No, not in my opinion. This is more like consider highway construction or road construction. Once the construction is done, the improved condition reaps massive benefits later. And that's what I'm expecting to achieve with this a little bit of might call it a hiatus, but mainly I'm doing my Saturday show and then pop-up shows. As people send tech issues in, I may just jump up with a live stream unscheduled. It may be outside of my normal hours just to knock it out, knock that one down. One of the things that I was having trouble with is some people might say, me principally, would say that I'm obsessive compulsive. So YouTube live streaming for me was, I loved it. I love it, but I tend to, the stream ends and I'm still thinking about it all through the day. I'm thinking about the next stream and I'm not focusing on my billable work that I need to be doing, and things just weren't getting done. So I've had to break my habit and try to change things around. So I've actually, as far as things have changed, oh man, Carey, I think you know this because I think you were watching a show when I said it. Since making that change on my show, I have not watched one of your shows. I did watch one video of yours when you posted about the the support Windows paid support. That was like
Windows
a
10,
10-minute
yeah.
video. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't watched any of the channels that are part of our community. Not only that, I have not watched any other videos from any other channel. I am totally YouTube free zone plus. I don't think I've even told my audience this. No Netflix, no Amazon Prime Video, no Hulu. I'm not watching any videos except for one. I have a friend that I get together with weekly, and we watch a sci-fi show. That's the only video I'm watching. That doesn't mean no entertainment, but my entertainment is audiobooks. I had to get my eyes off the screens and break myself from some habits. So, but I'll be back.
I mean, it's you got to have moderation, and sometimes, and we're all. I'm just as guilty of that, and it's I really get involved with something, and and then it can sometimes be hard to stop. It creates new habits, and sometimes those habits, while they're great and entertaining at first, they can become detrimental and cause a lot of stress or become overwhelming, and that's where it's like, take a break.
Yeah.
You know, I'll do that with food. I'll gorge for a couple of weeks, and then I look at the scale and I go, I don't want to eat anymore. Like, not only am I spending all this money on food, but I don't feel good about it. It initially started out feeling good, and I wanted to feel good again, right? So, hey, I'll go out to dinner. And after a while, I go out to dinner for a while, and then suddenly it doesn't seem appealing anymore. It's like if you had filet mignon and lobster every day, you'd be like, I am so sick of filet mignon and lobster.
Oh, yeah.
But if you keep it sort of a treat, it's always something special to be enjoyed. And I think YouTube, other things that we enjoy, if you were living up at the cabin 7 days a week, 12 months a year, it might feel like it'd be good to get back in the city a little bit. Maybe. That one might be a stretch.
No, I would say that because there's some inconveniences about there. And I this year in particular, I'm finding more of my pleasure with being up there is hiking rather than actually being in the cabin. And
well, you know, if you're just going to stay in the cabin, you might as well stay home.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, that's the whole point.
Home is more comfortable than the cabin.
Well, on the inside, I would think the outside's more comfortable at the cabin. I would think. It is for me when I go being outdoors and the trees and well, you're not in the desert either like I am. So for me to see the trees, hear the wind blowing through the trees, see squirrels, you know, birds that are not pigeons.
Yeah.
There's other kinds of birds. I did not know this. I worked on a project that I think you'd be interested in, and that is this little guy right here. And what I found is, you remember you have the Nano KVM?
Yeah.
Okay, so they make just the bare bones version of it, the Nano KVM Lite. It's like $40. Did you watch that video?
Yeah, I saw a piece of it.
So essentially, the bottom line is, you know, this is the Nano Lite. In fact, let me bring it up to the camera a little bit here. We can take a close. Everybody at home can see it a little better. And you stick this little heat sink on there, and this is all you get for $40. Now, here's the problem, and why this doesn't make any financial sense. You have to provide your own HDMI cable. You have to provide your own, come on, focus. You have to provide your own USB cable. And on top of that, you have to provide your own memory card for which to load the operating system. Now, these are cheap. These are like $6 a piece. And they make these up to 2 terabytes now, if you can believe that. What happened? I lost 2 terabytes of data. Where'd you lose it? It's in the carpet somewhere. Be careful. This is super tiny. This is like the size of my pinky nail. It's insanely tiny.
Jeez.
But these are like $6 a piece. All right. So when you add up the cost of the cables, the cost of the unit, and then you get your memory card, you download and you figure out, how to put the image on there and update it. Then the next challenge you're going to have is, how do I find this on my network? It doesn't have a screen and it doesn't have a discovery app. And I'm still working with Nano KVM or SciPede, the people who make it, to say, hey, you're just missing one piece of this, because I want to make a video. In fact, I was making the video, which everything, I'm showing, if you buy one of these, just follow all these steps and you'll get it working. And the one I just couldn't get past was how to locate it on the network without a third party like IP scanning or a network scanning tool, or logging into the router and identifying it. I wanted something native to Windows that you could just type in, or I want a discovery app like Synology has, or QNAP, or any of those other NAS manufacturers, right? Because once you log into this, once you find it on your network, then you can change its host name to be, Nano KVM, and then you don't need to know its IP address anymore, ever again. But it's never the same. So how do you know how to find it? Because if it was the same, how would you set up 2 or 3 or 4 of them at the same time? You wouldn't be able to. So they all have different names. They're all going to get different IP addresses. And I started looking at maybe a little batch file or something in PowerShell I could run, and they just take forever to do the IP scan. And when I reached out to SciPede, they said that the Pro version that should be coming out later this month, they've got a discovery tool for it, but it's not for Windows. They said they could easily port it over to Windows. And I'm like, well, would you do? Why do I want to code the software myself if they've already got it written?
Right.
So I'm going to sit back and wait till the Pro version comes out and see if they release a discovery tool. And I also left a request at GitHub for somebody to code it. It's going to be simple. The 3 hexadecimals of the MAC address are assigned to SciPede, among other manufacturers, but that would be a quick way to just look at the MAC addresses, identify it. Once you're logged into it, once you find it, you log into it, you set it up. You'll never need that discovery tool again. So that's the only downside. But here's the thing. By the time you buy the memory card and you buy a USB cable and HDMI cable, you're going to be into this about the price of the regular Nano version that has a screen, so you don't have to guess the IP address, and a case.
Yeah.
So this is more like, hey, I want to put together something for fun. This is not a financially sound idea, but I have to admit, I did enjoy putting it together, and I did enjoy the challenges. I don't often do stuff like this because I'm too busy. I don't have time. But I figured, this isn't going to take that much time. And I really enjoyed it.
You said you enjoyed putting it together. Did you have to assemble that?
Well, I had to figure out how to get where the image was for that's not clear. Not to me, it wasn't, because they have different images for different high KVMs and nano KVMs. And so I initially downloaded the wrong thing. I didn't even know which file was the image. So I had to learn those file extensions that they use in Linux. And I'm like, okay, now I know what to look for. Then when I put the image on it, you're like 8 versions behind of the app. So you have an image version, and then you have the app version. So by getting the image on there, I initially used Rufus and it didn't work. So then I used Balena Etcher, and that worked just fine. And I thought, okay, it's a problem with Rufus. And I looked it up, and people were like, yeah, Rufus doesn't always burn Linux images correctly, blah, blah, blah. And I went on to GitHub, actually talked to the creator of Rufus. And he's like, no, Rufus works fine. These people are not making standard images. They're not following the rules, blah, blah, blah. And I said something a little bit about, you could make Rufus a little easier to use. No, I'm not making Rufus to hold people's hands. It's like, geez, okay. Then I said, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. I guess he's from Ireland, and we have a lot of Irish viewers, and he never responded. But I got a lot more respect for him because he was right. There's nothing wrong with Rufus. So I went back and reevaluated what I did. I think I might have had the wrong image and was wrongfully blaming Rufus. So once I found the right image, and I posted a link for that in my video notes. So if you ever want to follow along, you don't have to go searching for it and figuring it out like I did. Then the second part of it is, oh, I don't have any cables. So I temporarily borrowed some cables from another Nano KVM. And then I'm like, well, is it working? Is it booting? I don't know. I have to find it. How do you find it without a screen and without a discovery app? And I suppose just, peeling off the sticker and putting the heatsink on. I'm counting that as putting it together.
All right. And
But
I guess
now-
it doesn't have a hardware address printed on it either, right?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
And here's the thing. This has been my go-to since I built it because of how teeny tiny it is. I mean, it's not like it's that much smaller, but it's so tiny. Once you plug the cables into it, it's almost invisible, right? You get your HDMI in there and plug that into the target computer and give it internet. My only concern is, I don't want anything metal to hit the circuit board.
Right.
That's it. But overall, I mean, by the time you build a 3D printed case for it or something, and if you were to buy the screen daughter board and attach it, you're going to be into this $120, $130, or you buy it pre-built for half price. So this is definitely a hobbyist project. And I just, because time permitted, and because I've been so infatuated with these, I had to have the experience. So overall, once I can crack the nut for the discovery tool, like I said, if you're smart enough to know how to get into your router and look at your connected devices, or if you're smart enough that you know how to use like Angry IP Scanner or something, then obviously you don't need that. But I wanted a tool anybody could follow without having any real understanding of networking. Just click here, download this, step by step by step, because that's how I learned back in the day. I would, type programs in that were printed in computer magazines. And if I typed it wrong, the program didn't work right. It would often tell me what line of code I got wrong. And then I would associate what that line of code broke in the program. So now I understood what that did. It may be a very difficult way to learn, but it really worked well for me. So the idea is, we inspire people to find something they're interested in, encourage them to do it. Don't worry about initially why it works. And then the more you start to familiarize yourself with it, the more you can start to conceptualize, right, the technology, which then leads to eventually one day maybe being a computer or a computer technician or network administrator. But it has to start somewhere. With me, it started with getting video games to work.
Oh.
And it led to a career as being a computer technician. So you never quite know. And at the same time, maybe somebody has no desire. I don't care how this works. I just want to buy one and use it. There are no step-by-step guides online or on YouTube that I could find. So I was trying to fill that gap.
Right.
And I'm just stuck. I don't know what to do to tell people how to discover it in a Windows native way that anybody, regardless of their experience, would know how to do. So I'm just being patient, waiting for Cyped to see if they make that discovery tool. What I find ironic is no discovery tool is needed on the IP, on their KVM, Nano KVM Pro, because it has a screen on it.
Right.
The one thing that needs the discovery app doesn't have it. And one would argue, and this is the Linux community typical answer, anybody that would use one of these would know how to use an IP scanner and know how to log into their router. And I'm saying that's the problem I'm trying to change.
Yeah.
So in any event, this was a fun thing. I really enjoyed it, primarily because I didn't have to do it. I was doing it because I wanted to. It was a new experience.
Oh, I understand that bug.
Yeah. And it looks like behind you have some projects going on. I see a bunch of mini PCs back there.
Well, yeah, those three I own, and they're just I accumulated them, hold on to them for whatever project that I might want to do. I really haven't had much use for them, and this is my laptop, and at the moment I'm using it for my remote connection. So these right here aren't really client projects, but I had kind of a stressful funny thing happened on the way to the live stream with Carey. I had a computer yesterday with a client that became a problem, and I picked it up at, let's see, did I pick that up last night or this morning? Now it's hard to even, I picked it up this morning from their office about 5:30 a.m. to work on it here. They had a new part-time employee coming in at 2 o'clock today that we discovered yesterday is one particular function that that person really needs was not working. And this computer had somewhat of a history behind it. If I don't go into all of that and make the long story short, it was a bit of a panic to get that thing back over to their office and functional in time. And so that's what was up here before I swapped things over prior to the show. And I brought this back up because I've been having problems with Log Me and Rescue on both Baby Beast and Big Beast where it crashes under certain circumstances, but that doesn't happen on this, and it doesn't happen on my all-in-one computer that's out in the kitchen. So that's another troubleshooting issue that gets pushed back because I have a way to work around it. And I'm contemplating doing something that some people in the community might be surprised about. And Carey also, you'd be probably surprised about it. I think you all know my aversion to rebuilding a computer from scratch. And I'm really contemplating during this summer alternate schedule of rebuilding Big Beast from scratch and bringing it up in a more minimalist way than what it currently is, because there's a few issues with it that I attribute to all this clutter of stuff that I have on it. Now, one of the things that I'm going to avoid is I'm not going to install any of the RGB software.
Yeah, that can sometimes be the cause of a lot of problems.
I don't use it. I think that's just set on the default.
Okay. Yeah,
setting.
Which is what it's going to do anyway. You don't even need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't need that software.
I'm looking over in the chat and I failed to say hello to everybody. So let's take a minute and say hello to everybody joining us. Our friend Buster with a Amazon gift card just prior to the show. Thank you as always, Buster. That's Peter Laycock. Mortant joins us along with Mark Baggett saying hello, Parker Morse, and Mike's unboxing reviews and how to, who says, good evening all from a very balmy Southwest England. Oh, I was just watching Glastonbury, the music festival that goes on there every year. Doesn't sound like he's too far from there. Maybe that's Southeast England. Anyway, one of these days, talk about living out in the woods. Boy, that place looks beautiful. From Ireland, our friend Richard DeFries joins us. There's 3D everything. Our friend Buster says it is 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18.3 degrees Celsius right now in Edinburgh, in Bonnie, Scotland. It's going to be 117 degrees Fahrenheit predicted today, maybe setting a new record heat for this time of year. So I'm just trying to stay in the house. I mean, I do that anyway, but now I have an excuse besides being antisocial. Steve Chappelle says hello. There's Mark Gaines joining us from Northern Ireland. Ghetto Fortnite says hello. Of course, Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To has his own YouTube channel as well. Very good YouTube channel. And if you're not aware, of course, Doug does. So we've got a bunch of computer techs that have YouTube channels here hanging out today. And let's see, Barry Klein says hello. John Downey saying hello. Luke Greenia from Vermont says hello. I see Thomas MacT, and just looking through very quickly so we can get back to our conversation. Oh, and if you guys have any questions for myself or Doug, please ask in the chat room today. We will do our best to interrupt the stream and answer your questions as best we can. And let's see, of course, Mara's hanging out in there with us, our channel administrator. Terry says hello. There's Doman 2000, and I'm getting close to the bottom. No, I'm not close to the bottom. Fred Sunderman says hello. All right, I'm going to just skip through. Wow, we got a busy chat room in here. Jim KJ3N says hello. There's a $2 super chat from our friend Planet Cryos, another YouTube content creator that does the very similar kinds of things that Doug, myself, and Mike's unboxing reviews and how to. Joins us here with a $2 super chat. Thank you to Planet Cryos. And Frank Jimmy says hello. Brian Lightfoot says hello. Rick Lake says hello. Andy W6AD joins us. Wow, this list is just going. We got a popular show today.
Great.
El Perez says hello. Mortant says hello. Fred Vandermeulen says hello. Scott says hello. Chris Garrett says hello. And if we missed anybody, Brian Madonna, welcome in. We're not intentionally overlooking you, just trying to get through the list. But yeah, please join us in our live chat right now. You can certainly interact with each other. You don't have to interact with us. That's an amazing community of like-minded and very friendly and supportive folks. If you consider yourself one of those, please join us. If you don't, please don't. That's straight.
That's simple. Straight to the point.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you happen to catch my video review of a laptop manufacturer called Nemo?
I recently sold a Nemo laptop to a client a few weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago. But no, I don't think I saw your review.
So did you know about Nemo before I did? I wonder.
Maybe. I can go look up here when I bought it, because I think I ordered it on my account with his credit card.
How were you made aware of Nemo, and why did you order it? And what did you think of it?
No, I like it fine. I think I just search for laptops, which is my way these days. Is I'll just search for what Amazon currently has and order it. It was May 2nd is when I ordered that. So was that before your video?
What was the date?
May 2nd.
Oh yeah, that would have been long before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they reached out to me. I'm like, I don't know who they are. I just think they're another Asian manufacturer. It turns out they're assembled here in America. They have a 3-year warranty. They have a 90-day return policy. They even sell a bare bones version of a laptop, which when you order it, it arrives with the screws in a little bag and the battery disconnected, so that you put your own RAM and storage in. Then you put the screw, hook up the battery, put the screws on, and put your own operating system on. Oh. Who sells a bare bones laptop?
Yeah, that's
got an American service center, so you're not shipping it anywhere out of the country for repair. And everything is serviceable. You open it up, there's the battery, there's the Wi-Fi card, there's the RAM, there's the storage. And on top of that, they're selling them for like $250 to $300. And usually the cheaper it is, you're sacrificing the support side or the quality. I don't understand, if they can do this, why isn't anybody else doing it? And the first thing I thought is, I got to tell DougBetts about this, because he's been buying a lot of lower end entry level budget mini PCs and laptops for his clients. And this one, and my experience is very limited with it, but this one is the most impressive so far.
Oh yeah, well, my client's happy with it. Now there's a little bit more of a story to that particular client. What happened is his Dell, was it Latitude laptop, or was it the other one? I'm Inspiron. I'm not sure which one, but anyway, he broke the hinges on it. And rather than replacing the hinges, he decided to get a new laptop, and his Dell laptop was a Windows 11 capable laptop. It actually had Windows 11 on it, not just capable. We bought it with Windows 11. So here the hinges go bad, and instead of repairing it, he opts for this new inexpensive laptop, and super happy with it. And then I asked him, hey, do you mind if I go ahead and repair the hinges on my own? Can I give that to my grandson? He said, yes. So my grandson's now also received a laptop computer. That went over real big as well. And then I told the client.
So wait, your grandson got a laptop and a gaming PC?
Yes, the gaming PC through you and the laptop through my client. So he's kind of riding high right now. His friends kind of envy him, we'll say.
I'd say that's birthday and Christmas this year, kid.
Yeah, for a few years maybe. Well, he knows those purchases were not out of my pocket, and he's very appreciative, and he's scratching his head a little bit. Why are people who know you giving me stuff? Well, just deal with it. Get over it.
So
that was fun.
So you repaired the hinges. You gave it to your grandson.
Yeah.
And
Actually, that was last night. And so his mother came over to pick him up, and it wasn't quite ready. I had it out in the kitchen, and I was resetting it to factory, doing a factory restore on it. And gee, I think I just heard a cash register of a super chat from my side. Yeah, I did. Tony Wallow, $1.99. Thank you, Tony. So I was doing this reset, and it was taking a long time. His mother came over, so we got talking about some other things. I was still trying to drag my feet under the excuse that I wanted to show him how to perform an out-of-the-box experience and how to do a local user account. And so it did finally come up before they left. So I had him go through the out-of-box experience. I said, I'll just go and put in your name. And then he got all that done. I said, now, do you know how to do Windows updates? And he said, yeah, or whatever. And I said, okay, well, let's shut it down. And I took the power cord out and then held it out to him and said, enjoy. He just jumped. He jumped and spun around and came back, and he was just hugging it. Now, he was so distracted by that he forgot his cell phone. He left his cell phone here. And that was a big problem to us because he was going to be home alone this morning, and we didn't want that without the cell phone. So that's one of the things I had to do this morning is return the cell phone to him. My daughter told me that as they were walking up to their apartment from the parking lot, he was like doing a happy dance the whole way about having a laptop.
Well, I'm
so
glad
that was fun.
He appreciates it. And then what did you end up doing for the customer?
Oh, he got his new laptop weeks ago. His old laptop had been sitting around here for a while. I did the hinge replacement during a live stream. And yeah, it involves some epoxy repair. Actually, we did not replace the hinges because the hinges were fine. It was broken out of the plastic. So we used epoxy to repair that. And I'm pretty happy with how that went. And I was gonna, in the past, I have just ordered the hinges and then take it apart. For whatever reason, this time I took it apart and then discovered that the hinges are fine. And so then we discussed it in the chat room during live stream, and I wound up making the decision to use epoxy because I already had it on hand from a previous laptop repair that I did during stream on I think that was on a Surface laptop. I don't quite remember what it is that we were repairing on that. Somebody in chat will tell me. Chris says, do I have a video on that laptop? I don't have a video of giving the laptop to my grandson. Like the way that I had video for giving the gaming computer from Carey to him.
Well, you have a video of the hinge repair, don't you?
The hinge repair, yeah, but not giving it to my grandson, not his surprise. His on-camera surprise isn't real camera worthy.
My nephew is very
stolid,
kind of stoic. Yeah.
Stoic. Yeah.
And it can be sometimes hard to read them. And it does seem to be kind of a generational thing. Like they're learning it, I think, from their peers. And I don't know why. I don't know what's to be hidden or concealed. But, he's got to be him. It's fine.
He's been so good on camera, and he actually has his own YouTube channel. But when on that part of that trailer where he and his mother come in to my studio here, he's kind of kicking around at the floor, all shy looking. I thought, whoa, who is this? And that was with because he knew I had the camera on. But he's been fine with knowing that I have the camera on him. Before I have some trailers of him and I playing pan ping pong, where we're using kitchen pans and stuff to play ping pong on my kitchen counter. And he was hamming that up in front of the camera. I heard a read chat. Scott says, fixed the back clip on top. Oh, that's what I did with the epoxy on the surface, was I fixed the back clip on top. I'm vaguely remembering that. Scott, you're doing better than me.
I had to make a batch file. I wanted to make a batch file to copy my OBS directory from my streaming computer to my NAS. And I used to write the heck out of batch files for 20 years. It's just pretty much how I solved every problem. And I'm like, okay, trying to think about how do I got to remember the commands. How do I do that? And so I just, for the sake of it, I've heard you can have like ChatGPT or Copilot, write the code for you. So I wrote in Copilot, write me a batch file to copy my OBS Studio folder from my user directory in Windows 11 to a directory on my NAS. And by the time I hit enter, the code was there.
Yeah.
Now the code wasn't perfect, but it brought back, I was like, oh, I remember all this now. And I modified this, that, and the other. And then I tested it, and stupid me, I didn't name the directory I wanted to remove, and I started to remove everything. I shouldn't have tested on the NAS.
Oops.
But I noticed it was taking a long time, and I Control-C'd it, and I don't know what I deleted, but I freed some space up, and I have no idea what's missing. So then I was like, all right, moron, I fixed it. And then I copied that batch file that I was working on upstairs to the NAS. And the next day came down here, copied the batch file onto my desktop. And when I double click this batch file, what it does is it deletes the entire OBS Studio directory off the NAS and then replaces it. So instead of just copying it on top of itself, then you end up with potentially files that aren't used anymore, right? They never get deleted. And it's pretty small application. And I know you can do the backup and restore. What I'll do is if I ever need to put another streaming computer up in a moment's notice, or heck, even if I'm prepping another streaming computer, all I have to do is copy my video assets, like my intros and my lower thirds, copy those over, which I keep in the video directory. I install the latest version of OBS. Once OBS is installed, I make sure it's not running, and I copy the OBS folder off of the NAS on top of the OBS folder in the user directory. And that puts back everything. It puts back my bitrate settings, my profiles, my scenes. Exactly everything is the way it is, even the shape of the size of the window on the screen, And I'm so proud of myself. But as I'm saying it out loud, I realized I've not made a restore. I have to restore it. I'll have to copy and paste it by hand. But I didn't think of that till just now. But I'm patting myself on the back because I couldn't quite remember what all the Xcopy switches were. And ChatGPT or Copilot just put that all in there.
Right.
And one thing it would do is it started listing all these files across the screen. And I'm like, okay, I know there's a way to silence that. So just how to silence Xcopy output /Q. That's it. Add the /Q. Boom, my batch file was done. I am impressed.
Yeah.
I know you use Copilot all the time, but for me, I was like, wow, it wasn't perfect, but it got me 75% of the way there right out of the gate.
Right.
So
I've used it a lot with C++ programming, which is what's used in StreamerBot. I've done some pretty complex programming in there with it. And I don't know C++ enough to write a program from scratch in it at all. And I've been enjoying with AI helping and doing that stuff so much. I just don't have any reason to need to learn it. However, it does. I have many times had to use my human technician's understanding of coding and what I want done to actually correct it, or I find its mistakes even though I don't know the syntax as well as it does, and then I can guide it through fixing what it has done wrong. And I found that kind of enjoyable to do. I've also found it where, in some cases anyway, the overall project takes longer than if I really know how to do the coding well myself. I've been using Gemini more than Copilot recently. In fact, I just canceled my Copilot subscription. I was paying extra money for the Copilot add-on that I can't really elaborate what exactly it does beyond the free version, but I still have the free version, 2 free versions really, because there's one that comes with Windows, there's one that comes with the Microsoft 365 subscription, and then there's an extra Copilot subscription that you can pay for on top of the Microsoft 365 included Copilot. Not confusing at all.
I don't pay for any of them, but it's interesting when I talk to different people. A friend of mine likes to use Perplexity, which I've never even heard of.
Yeah,
I've never used Grok. Mara likes to use, well, when she's like looking recipes, like trying to create recipes, low carb, sugar-free recipes, she'll use DeepSeek. That's given her a lot of good suggestions. And of course, the general rule is you never use one, right? You're always kind of bouncing back and forth. And the truth is somewhere in between. It's often considered a great launching point, but not necessarily the complete solution. But we're getting there quickly.
They are changing and improving a lot. Another one that I'm using is aistudio.google.com, and particularly the stream function within that. What you can do with that is when you select stream, then you can share your screen, similar to the way you would share a screen in Zoom, where you get a list of the screens that you have available, pick which one you want to share, and then it can watch what you're doing, and it can guide you through, telling you how to do what you're trying to accomplish in virtually any program or website. Now, sometimes the instructions from it come out pretty generic, and it doesn't have the capability of searching the web for an answer. So sometimes it's giving generalized answers how to do something rather than specifically how to do that task in that particular software or that particular environment. But it's been very useful. There's so many of it. It's just, you can't.
I haven't had a lot of use for it, but what I'm finding is when people are writing in questions, I can just copy and paste their question right in Copilot.
Oh, yeah.
And
no editing.
I can usually just go to the summary or whatever again, so it's giving me all the information, and what I'm doing is I'm filtering that to what is the succinct point or answer to the question, copy and paste it. Tech support's never been easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And close related, if I'm doing a search on YouTube looking for a solution to an issue, and I find somebody's video that's 20 minutes long, 40 minutes long, whatever, I'll use the ask function within YouTube. Now, you only get that if you're on premium YouTube. So as a premium subscriber of YouTube, there's an extra button at the bottom of somebody's video. It's called ask. You click on that. Now it gives you an AI on the right side panel. And a very common one that I use, that's you just click on it because it's offered there already, is summarize this video. And it'll give a summary of the video, or I'll ask a question like, does the host talk about such and such? And it'll give me timestamps within the video where he talks about it and what was said. So it helps make it take less time to find the answers within a video that I want.
Another computer technician and content creator here on YouTube, Ask Your Computer Guy,
Scott.
Yeah, Scott is mentioning Dave Plummer, who was a coder for Microsoft back in the day. Wow, we got the full house of computer techs. This could be a tag team wrestling match. We get Mike's unboxing in there. We got a pair off, and let's see if we can bring up something controversial to pull these guys into the conversation, along with the audience is willing to join us. Let me think. What controversial subject could I? Should I mention the word Linux? Did I take it too far? I love when people, like when I post Windows 10 support will be extended if you want to just sync your settings with a Microsoft account. I'm not going to give Microsoft my information. And the best version of Windows was version 98. Why can't it be simple like Windows 98 used to be? Oh, I don't know, because maybe the internet and all the millions of people trying to attack you that you're oblivious of. Well, I don't know why Windows needs my information, and I don't know why I can't customize it, because you should be using Linux instead of Windows. You're using the wrong operating system, and you're getting mad at the operating system. I see a lot of entitlement. I see so much of this criticism and comments that'll say things like, this is why I use Linux. Why are you watching a Windows video? I switched to Linux years ago. So my joke is when people come out to the comment section and they evangelize Linux, imagine if you did that on a Linux video or forum and evangelized Windows, how you'd be torn apart. So to me, and this is no offense to, no intended offense, it's just meant as an objective observation that many Linux members of the Linux community are the modern day digital version of Jehovah's Witnesses. Just knock on the door and go, do you believe in our Lord and Savior, Linus Torvalds? You know, it's just, I'm trying to find the humor in it because there's so much of it. Well, this is why I'm going to go on the Windows forums and then tell people how terrible Windows is and how I was saved by Linux, and I will recruit more over to my side of it. And it's like, oh my gosh. So what are your feelings on Linux, Doug and Scott and Mike? What do you think?
It's totally useless in the business world. I can't make a living out of it. So for the people who want to use it, that's fine. Go ahead and use it.
Yeah, I mean, it can be
not
used
really
for,
interested.
You know, web design and back-end server stuff in a business, but not for the workstations, not generally.
Yeah, it's used a lot for web hosting and for hosting services in large corporate environments, but I haven't done any of that. You know, used. I think it's used on some Internet of Things devices. I mean, it has a valuable, important place in technology. Just I can't make any money out of it with the support that I do for small offices, and because that's the environment I'm in, I need to eat my own dog food in the sense. I need to be using the operating systems that I'm supporting so that I know it better. There's nothing that attracts me for my purposes, for my uses. There's nothing that attracts me to use Linux. I would not at all try to persuade somebody away from using Linux if they want to. You got a reason you want to do it? Go ahead. I can't help you with it because I don't have any reason to spend time learning it. I have tinkered with it. I tinkered with it during my show. I let my audience guide me through actually installing it. Did we install it on a computer or virtual? I don't remember if it's a virtual machine or an actual computer. I'm not interested in salvaging a older computer by installing Linux on it because I don't have a use for that. None of my clients have a use for that. And the cost, especially with these low cost computers these days, there's just no financial incentive to spin up a computer with Linux. By the time they pay my hourly rate to do that, there's no financial benefit there whatsoever, even if it did run the software that we needed. So
Yeah, if I have a practical use for it. So my understanding of Linux, I know enough to get myself around the basics, and most of it I've even forgotten, and I have to re-Google, and then it's like, oh, I remember now. This ridiculous things like, hitting the colon to exit out of the VI editor, and it's like, how does that make any sense to anybody? It's almost like it's it's intentionally cryptic. It's not intuitive in any way, shape, or form. I don't know what they were thinking, but regardless of that, I don't necessarily go onto Linux forums and complain about it. I deal with it. So, for example, with the latest Synology 925 and its drive restrictions, that's all based on Linux. So there's nothing Synology can do to lock that down ever, unless they come up with their own operating system. And the lack of understanding that I see from the hobbyists and enthusiasts on YouTube is they seem to believe that there are absolutes, or it's too sketchy. It's like nothing in this world has absolutes. I see it all the time. People want absolute answers. They want blanket statements. What's the best way to accomplish X, Y, or Z? And it's never the same for two people, rarely. And we have to understand the circumstances, and we have to understand the limitations or a time limit, whatever budget and time we have to accomplish the task. And then, of course, if besides that, the actual technical part of it, which is what hardware and software do we need to accomplish a task. Rarely is there a time where I can just say to an audience, this applies to all of you. Sometimes, but very rarely. We offer the information for people to pick and choose from what they relate to or what they find useful. And well, I'm not a big fan of Linux myself. If I want to jailbreak the Synology, I have to do some very basic Linux things. And thankfully, there are Linux users that have already done this. And this is the other thing. Anytime I have an idea, before I get too involved in figuring out how to solve or create my idea, I Google it, and sure enough, somebody else has already done it every time. So sure enough, somebody jailbroke the Synologies back around the 2018 when they started drive compatibility enforcement. And then over the years, the compatibility has gotten narrower and narrower to the point we're at now, where it's nothing but Synology drives. And all they're doing is they're taking that hard drive database that contains the permitted drives, and they're just copying it over onto the 925. It's a real easy thing. And people say, well, what if Synology updates and replace? Well, then you just put it back again. What do you think? It's going to catch fire? And and they go, well, what if they update it doesn't work? Well, this has been working for like 6 or 7 years now on all the previous models. So this lack of understanding how things work results in a lot of fear and anxiety over something that would never happen. And if it did, it's still the same fix that you did before. It doesn't change anything. And if you just automate it as a scheduled task and let it run automatically every time your Synology boots, you could easily walk away and forget it, right? And just forget that's even in there. So whenever I have those projects, I grumble. I'm like, I got to get into this Linux, and I got to figure out. I already know it can be done, and I already have a base idea of how to do it. Then I start Googling it, and I found 6 different ways to do it. There's not just one way.
I'd be turning to AI if I were going to do a project like that.
Well, I found a wonderful GitHub community that detailed it. And a lot of GitHub communities, they kind of feel like if we have to detail it, it's not for you. This sort of looking down their nose. But this one was done really well. And they broke it down into a flow chart and step by step. They didn't just go enter the VI editor. They actually showed you the command to copy and paste. That's the kind of style I like. Let anybody follow along. And if they want to learn it, they'll learn it by doing, because that's how I learned. That's how I still learn. And I tested it out. I said, I got to make a video on this. Nobody has this video. And then I thought, I wonder if Synology is going to come after me for this. Nope. So for that reason, I've got the 925 and I'm using it for testing. Works great. I mean, my theory is this. I don't think what I'm doing is a snub against Synology. I think I'm helping them. And the reason I say that is if somebody says, I am done with Synology because they won't accept anybody's drives but their own, let me show you how you can easily get around that. You don't have to know Linux. I'm going to show you every link and every click. Set it as a scheduled task. It'll run automatically at boot up. So no matter future updates, it'll always work. So go ahead and buy your Synology. And hopefully one day Synology will update that hard drive database for at least the same compatibility they have on the 924, which means Seagate Iron Wolf, Western Digital Reds. They're just missing right now. And Synology says, oh, we're going to do some more compatibility testing in the future, and we'll make the list more, wider scale. But they haven't done it yet. So in the meantime, you can buy one, and you can start using it with whatever drives you have by just following some easy how-to tutorial with free information provided by GitHub that I just turned into a walkthrough video. And now maybe Synology will get more sales. That's my take on it. Now
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There's a little bit of a change. So if you weren't finished with your thought.
Well, I was going to say, I sent you one of the Synologies that I had here.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you ever used it at all.
It's holding down a piece of paper right there. No. I have not taken the time to deal with it yet, but I have a question for you regarding the Synology. I have a client who I'm contemplating putting in a rack mount Synology for them. I guess depending upon how you answer the first question, that there's going to be a follow-up question. In a 4-bay Synology, can I set up 2 drives in RAID 1 mirroring and another 2 drives in RAID 1 mirroring? So those are 2 different mirrors within the same Synology? I would expect that's a yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So then the reason why I'm attracted to that is because I am using that that technique as a backup as a backup system in their current file server. By taking out one of the RAID drives and replacing it with another, now I have a full image backup on that drive that I took out.
Yeah.
But I can't just connect that drive to any Windows PC and access it. I'm going to still have to access it in one of those servers because it's a SAS drive.
Or Linux.
Well, sure, but not a Windows computer. So these drives in the Synology, with doing a mirroring, can I take one of those drives out and access those from a Windows computer? I would suspect it has to be formatted with NTFS rather than with Synology's proprietary format.
NTFS is not an option.
NTFS is not an option. Okay,
that's for Windows. That's a Microsoft file system.
Okay, so Synology doesn't do NTFS. So if I pull that drive out of there, I will not be able to connect it to a Windows computer and access what's on the drive.
No,
it's going to have to be in a Synology device.
Well, or a Linux device that reads ext4 or BTRFS. I would use BTRFS. It's much better. And, bigger file systems would be like ZFS, but this is all Linux file systems. BTR or Butterfuss, BTRFS is B-tree file system. This is all Linux talk, by the way. I won't use a NAS unless it has BTRFS. I absolutely refuse. It's the only thing I'll use. But we were just discussing this on my members only video about how I back up my clients, and you might find this, well, you may not find this useful, but maybe you will. I'll hope for the best. I'm gonna point like Babe Ruth, and I'm gonna swing for the fences here. But here's what I do. I take somewhere down under the desk. I've got one of these. How big is your? How much data does this client have approximately on the drive?
They're right at 1 terabyte.
That's nothing. Okay, so here's what I would do: is I would take one of these, just a standard SSD, USB Type C or Type A, whatever, plug it into one of the client computers, and copy everything off of this file server or the NAS onto this. And what I'll normally do is I'll make a directory on this, and I'll call it backup month, day, year. So 07-09-25. Then I open that backup folder that I've dated, and I just highlight everything on the server or the NAS, copy it, and then paste it on here. That'll take a while. Whatever. It's local on the network. I do it at night. Then what I do is I buy another one of these. I buy at least 2 of them. Once the first one's done, I'll get a label maker and I'll put backup 1, backup 2, so I can identify which is which. I'll do the same thing on the second one. I keep one, they keep one. And I'll always leave it attached to somebody's computer. I just tell them, ignore it, don't worry about it. I set it on top of the computer, I plug it in, and then I log in remotely, and I use a program called Syncovery to then synchronize everything on the NAS or server on a weekly basis over onto this device as a mirror image. So if anything's been deleted off the NAS, it's deleted off of here. If it's been added to the NAS, it's added here. This is an exact mirror duplication when I run the Syncovery software. Now, Syncovery, I've been using it for years. It used to be called Super Flexible File Synchronizer. And our friends at RoboForm have a program called GoodSync. And there's even a way to do this within Windows, which is, you know, a little too technical. I'm looking for something simple, and Super Flexible File Synchronizer is a powerful tool, and I'm barely using it. Like this is just a basic exact mirror. And of course you have basically this conceptualization of we're copying from the left to the right or the right to the left. And I always choose the left is my source. I say never, ever change anything on the left side that is forbidden. You don't delete anything, you don't move anything, you leave the left side alone. That's our source. Then I say the right side, this is one of these. And after I've made my full copy, then I file synchronize, and it'll compare any differences from the last time I synchronized and just copy over the changes, the moves, the deletions only on the right side. And I change the name of the folder to backup 0715-25. Then I know the last time it was backed up by just looking at the folder date. Now, the other thing I do is I run a program called Tailscale. And Tailscale is an app that you can install on the Synology NAS. It's from GitHub. It's completely free. And it creates, when I go to my network, essentially, I can see my clients' networks, just as though I were on a computer in the office. But it's all encrypted. It's all 2FA secured. And what I can do is tell Synology, sorry, not Synology, I can tell Syncovery that the left side is no longer the NAS. The left side is now this IP address / the NAS name over at my client's office. I plug this into my computer 30 miles away, and I say, synchronize the files off the server onto this. Now, I am limited with speed, right? Because we're over the internet. And of course, if you have bandwidth limits, you might have to watch that depending on how much data you're moving. But I don't even have to drive to my clients, because what I used to do is take their drive after about a month and swap it with my drive. And then once a month, I'd resynchronize, you know, and I'd always have an offsite backup if there's a fire, a theft, a flood, whatever happens, some catastrophe at their office. Worst case scenario, I've got it here. But now I don't have to drive over there anymore. With Tailscale, it's completely free. I load it as an app onto the Synology, and I authorize it, which is a double authentication method. Then I authorize it on my laptop, and it just kind of sits in the system tray. You don't even know it's there. It doesn't have any performance hit or anything. They don't notice it either. And then usually at night when they're gone, I'll go ahead and start the file synchronization. And if it's been a while, you know, I'll just let it run overnight. When I wake up in the morning, it's done. And because it's still the same Syncovery software that I'm already familiar with, all I'm doing is changing the source location to the IP address that I get from Tailscale for their device that I'm authorized into, without opening up the server to outside access. Any of that, was that too much information?
No, I think I followed it.
It is so cool. I mean, having to drive 30 miles to my clients and then 30 miles back just to swap a drive out. What I used to do is I'd take my drive and I wouldn't even unplug the cable. I just unplug the drive, plug my drive in. One is labeled backup 1, one's labeled backup 2. and I switch them around, and then I start the file synchronization because the one I've had at my house has been sitting for a month. It's going to take a while. So I start the file synchronization, then I leave the building, lock the doors, and go home. Usually by the time I get home, the drive I dropped off is updated because it's happening a lot faster on the local network. This way, I'm not dealing with any mirror array, and I don't have to worry about, oh, let's say something happens. Let's say the building does burn down. What are we going to do? Well, let me get my cape. I can grab any of these mini PCs, ask the business owner, where do you want to set up your business today? You want to work out of your house? You want to work out of a hotel room? Just say when. They say, yeah, we got to keep operating. Our business is burned to the ground. We've lost everything. Let me loan you some computers. Let's get them hooked up. You tell me where you're going to operate out of. I'll bring this, and this is going to be your new file share temporarily, because that means we're kind of without a backup. But this will get us through until we get it figured out, and we replace the NAS and replace the drives. Then this becomes our new source that we copy back over. But we're not in the panic of hurry, hurry, hurry. I can set up a whole office back the way it was. Probably take me 2 hours. And furthermore, I could set them up where they could work from home. And I could share this on my network and just say, here's how you're going to access this resource. It'll be a little slower, but until things get rebuilt, your business isn't on an indefinite pause, losing money every hour of every day. I love having a solution. And so what you mentioned about, can I take the drive out of the Synology and plug it in? If you did it the way I'm showing you, you can. But if you're doing it the way you think, you need a spare Synology drive. Like Synology.
Synology
NAS.
device. Yeah.
And it would have to be specific. Like you wouldn't be able to use QNAP and put a Synology drive in it.
Yeah.
Or,
well, I have all of the benefit of what you described in my current system, but I'm not currently using Synology. So that's why I was asking, can I do that same thing with Synology? Now, the SAS drives that I swap out every 2 weeks in these two servers, that's just the server operating system and the user profiles and such. Those drives don't actually have the data. The data I do have on external drives and in the cloud through Magnus Box. So I can set them up within a couple hours elsewhere. And I even have spare servers here for that particular office. So yeah.
William Bird said that there's BTRFS drivers for Windows.
I suspect Btriev's, I've known Btrieve in the Windows arena for a long time. I was a little bit surprised when I got the impression you were saying that that's a Synology thing.
No, it's a Linux thing.
Linux, yeah. But Btrieve, doesn't SQL Server use Btrieve as its database engine? SQL.
I know more about brain
databases?
surgery than I know about SQL Server.
Yeah, because Btrieve, I've known of that. And I mean, I don't know it well, but my encountering of the term Btrieve. Oh no, actually, Novell NetWare had Btrieve.
Did it?
Yeah,
I didn't think it was that old.
I'm pretty sure I'm right about that.
Now you're going to make me Google this. Did Novell
Me too.
use BTRFS? I don't think so.
I don't know that it called
yes,
it
specifically with SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Look at you. You're just like a vault of historical file system information.
Yeah, that's how it was database systems in Btrieve. Yeah.
So what I love
I was a Novell NetWare certified Novell NetWare engineer. That was the thing back in the day.
You had to be certified to be a Novell engineer, certified nuts.
Yeah.
No, I never the Lotus Notes days and Banyan Vines. Did you ever use Banyan Vines?
Actually, I cut my teeth on Symphony 1.2. No, not Symphony. Yeah, it's a program called Symphony. It was a big brother to Lotus 1.2.3.
I thought it was related to Lotus.
Yeah, Lotus 123 was the basic spreadsheet function. Well, you add database and word processing to Lotus 123, and that's what's called Symphony.
Kind of makes sense when you think about it. It becomes a symphony.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's a symphony of product. It's multiple capabilities. I did quite a significant, well, that really amounted to programming in Symphony, which amounts to macros and functions and formulas. But still, it's creating instructions, and it had all the programming concepts in it. So Gary says, for Novell, I wrote the token ring drivers that came in the box. Gary Weisenberger, he wrote the token ring drivers for token ring networks.
Wow.
Wow.
Nerd alert.
Yeah.
Good old token ring. Put those terminators on.
Right.
Let's see. So talking about file synchronization, another thing I like about file synchronization is we're not using any backup software. So we don't have to worry about any restore software. It's just a copy and paste essentially of the data in its original format. And yes, with Syncovery, you can also do versioning and you can do compression and encryption, which, you know, if you want to secure your synchronization, you can. Slows things down. And if you want to do versioning, it's going to take up more space. If your client has a terabyte of data, it'll quickly consume 3 terabytes of data if you're keeping 3 copies of everything. I don't use any of those features. It's a very powerful tool. It can even synchronize both directions if there's multiple changes being made in different places to whatever the latest version is, along with the versioning. Like, this thing gets really hairy. Back when I did the radio show, I brought this gentleman on, Tobias Giesen, I think his name is, with a program called Super Flexible File Synchronizer. That's got to be 20 years ago. And while it's changed names to Syncovery, it's still the same. The idea that I don't have to start over and learn something new, right? The upgrades from one version to the next have mostly kept the interface the same and familiar. So when I upgrade from version 6 to version 7 to now version 11.5, it mostly looks the same. There's some new bells, whistles, and features, but I'm not starting with a completely different interface. So as I mentioned, GoodSync, that's a competitive product from the folks that make RoboForm over at Cyber Systems. And I can't wrap my head around what's the left side, what's the right side, how do I do the exact mirror? And it's supposed to be easier. But there's what I already know. So it doesn't mean GoodSync's not a good product. It just means that I've already cut my teeth on Super Flexible, and I'm familiar with it and I'm efficient with it. And even though GoodSync might be it might even be a better alternative, I don't know. I have no reason to go looking at it. But if you're just starting out and you, for the viewers out there, not for you, Doug, but if you're just starting out familiarizing yourself with file synchronization software, those are 2 big ones right there. Syncovery and GoodSync. And really, whatever one kind of speaks to you or makes the most sense to you, I would probably start with GoodSync. If I had to do it all over again, I think GoodSync overall just looks simpler. And Syncovery looks like once you get under the hood of it, it starts looking like a pilot's, a cockpit for a pilot, like just buttons and switches and dials and levers, and you can do so much to customize it. But I like that. And I also like that it didn't have all those bells, whistles, and features when it first started. So, while it might intimidate me today if I didn't have any prior experience, I look at it now as just an addition to what, I've seen the program evolve. And again, most of it I don't use. I use everything to the very basic, like the Synology NAS that you have. The way I use those, I don't load any apps on them other than Tailscale. That's it. It's the only app I use. Now, yes, you can use Jellyfin and you can use Plex and you can stream your media. You can do all that stuff. I use it as essentially a USB drive that's connected to the network that everybody in the office has access to. that doesn't, I set it up so it doesn't require a name or a password. You just have to be on the network. If somebody wants to work remotely, then they will remote into the computer at the office and use the software on the office computer. We're not putting the software on their home computer, and they will locate the files that they need to work on through the office computer as though they were at the office, so we don't have to give outside access to the NAS. But effectively, this is a USB storage device with a Synology, or any NAS is how I treat it, that I map a drive letter to. So when we plug this in, this might be drive D. I call my Synology drive Z. I go all the way to the end of the alphabet. So when I plug things in, or the customer plugs things in, we don't have drive interference of multiple similar letters. And everybody in the office has drive Z. And whenever they're working on Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, Quicken files, PDF files, it all goes into however they want to organize it. And if anything happens to their computer at the office, they're advised to go sit at a different computer at the office for the rest of the day, so I don't have to drop everything I'm doing. If they have a drive failure, they don't lose any data. They're only losing Windows and the installed apps. It's no big deal to reinstall Windows and reinstall the apps, remap them to the network drive, and they're back up and running again. And then all I back up is the NAS. I don't have to back up each individual computer. And that is my secret sauce to my managed service providing. Keep it simple, and it can recover us from anything from ransomware, accidental deletions, malicious actions from pissed off employees that want to, delete everything on the way out, fires, thefts, floods, viruses. We're covered because we have a disconnected backup offsite. There you go.
Your description of the way you use the NAS for yourself, a network connected USB. Is there any advantage of the way you're doing it compared to actually connecting a external drive to your router? Some routers have the capability of connecting a USB device there that would be accessible to everyone.
That is effectively replacing a NAS for file share, except at scale. The problem gets to be when you have multiple people trying to access it simultaneously, you're limited to the speed of the USB port, right? And so things will slow down. Also,
all right, because that would actually be going through a USB port, and the NAS is not going through a USB port.
The NAS is going through the network.
Yeah, not a USB port. Okay,
right.
That makes sense.
So,
that's
but the NAS will have a more powerful processor than your router will. So the NAS can handle, a basic network attached storage will handle 50 employees easy. Now, if you're at home and you just want to share files with the 3 computers in your house, this is, plugging this into the back of your router is fine. You'll get the same effect. If you don't want to use any of the apps, like you don't want to use Jellyfin, you don't want to use Docker, Kubernetes, you don't want to run virtual machine, because the NAS can do all of this, by the way. I just want it as a data vault.
Yeah.
And we could create our own cloud. If you're paying for OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox, you could create your own that'll never cost you a penny by securely turning on outside access. You got to make sure you tighten it down real good. And then you can access your files or share files with others that you choose to give access to anywhere in the world that's connected to the internet. And there's no monthly fees or anything for that. Now try doing that with your router. It may be possible in some routers, but again, when multiple people are trying to access at the same time, you'll run into bandwidth issues. It's sort of like being in a house and you're in the shower and someone flushes the toilet and then the shower gets really cold. I see people get hung up on high-speed internet. They go, oh, my internet service provider is offering me 10 gig fiber. Should I get it? Well, 10 gig fiber really doesn't typically help one person. Where 10 gig fiber helps is if there's 10 people, let's just say, for example, and they're each watching Netflix in 4K, something really resource intensive for bandwidth usage and bandwidth consumption, each one of those 10 people effectively gets a full gig internet to themselves of internet speed. When you have 1 gig of internet and 10 people are all trying to watch Netflix or game, then suddenly the movie starts stuttering and buffering. So when I hear one person says, I want to get faster internet for me. I think I'll go to 10 gig. And this is true of a Synology or, a NAS. I want to do a 10 gig network. Okay, yeah, your files are going to move at 1,000 megabytes per second instead of 100 or 280. How many files are you moving? The benefit is when multiple people in the office are moving big files at the same time, it's as though they have it all to themselves. They can't tell the difference that anybody else is using it. And I'm trying to get this concept through to people who are calling me and saying, what do you think if I get this, 10 gig upgrade? And I'm like, that's really expensive. And what's that going to do for you? A lot of times the websites you're visiting can't keep up with that, or the services that you're using can't keep up with it. This is for, trying to think of the right word. If you've got a hotel and multiple people are going to be taking showers at the same time, you need multiple water heaters and more water pressure. You're not doing that for one shower. It's
if you put in the bigger water heater and then somebody goes take a shower, the only person taking the shower, the water's not going to come through that pipe any faster or different, just because
Correct.
There's that big water heater. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of an analogy for that. That kind of works. Data flow is often like water flow, and it doesn't necessarily make any sense to drink out of a water fountain that's a fire hose.
Yeah, I have an office that uses it's a pest control company, and they use a web-based system to manage their customers, and it's kind of sluggish. When they switched to the cloud-based software instead of local, they were complaining that it was slower. Well, they've recently been replacing computers with the mini Windows 11 computers, and they can tell that the computers are faster, but that web service is still operating about the same. And that was not at all a surprise to me, because running a database program off of a website is most likely going to be sluggish to whatever speed that website is providing its services at. And when they saw that happen with these newer, faster computers, I go, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. I'd like to respond to a couple comments I saw over here. I think John Downey, a couple of them. Where was it? I'm looking at just his comments now. Well, one would, the cybersecurity, Linux. My most significant experience with Linux was when I started taking some courses in cybersecurity, where that's a big deal there. I wound up concluding, you know what, this course is all about the course making money rather than me really learning at any significant pace. So I dropped that. And he says that Kali Linux is widely used in that arena. Yeah. So in cybersecurity, Linux is huge, critical. You have to do that. Then the other thing is, John Downey says, why not use OneDrive to back up? Now, I do, but I've got to qualify that, because some people will come unglued saying, OneDrive's not a backup. No, OneDrive's not. It is a form of backup, but it should not be your only source of backup. I have recovered probably more from OneDrive for file damage or file deletions or even folder deletions using OneDrive rather than using the actual traditional backups, because it's quicker to get it. I also have a couple of offices where we're using SharePoint and have the offices almost completely operating from the web instead of their servers. We actually have a server there, which is essentially synchronizing the SharePoint as a form of backup. But the user workstations are primarily working from the cloud. So that's a little weird to actually be thinking of the server as a form of backup. There's a variety of things that that OneDrive has capabilities of in terms of backup that a lot of people aren't aware of, because there are immutable copies of the files, and a lot of people assume that's not the case. It works different. It is not a sole reliable backup, meaning we have other forms of backup.
It doesn't scale well.
Pardon?
It doesn't scale well. It's
Well,
fine
what do you
for
mean? What do you mean by scale?
2 million files in a company
On SharePoint?
on OneDrive.
Well, no, you wouldn't be doing it on OneDrive for the company. OneDrive would be for individual users. SharePoint is for
I just
the
want to make
company.
sure listeners understand that, because
Okay, thank
that
you.
wasn't clear to me that
Okay,
we had
yeah.
specified, wait a minute.
It's
you know,
they're very closely related yet different.
I said earlier, too many people on the internet are looking for absolute answers.
Yeah.
And the answers will never be absolute. Well, very rarely. That under certain circumstances that are unique to your needs or budget or expectations, this is the answer for you. But for the person standing right next to you with different needs, budgets, and expectations, it's a completely different answer for them. And neither answer is wrong and neither answer is right, except for the individual. So OneDrive for an individual can be very helpful, and OneDrive on a business can be very detrimental. Would you agree?
Well, depending upon how you use it. If you're only using OneDrive for the business, then yeah. But if you're using SharePoint for the business, because you have a for business Microsoft 365 account, it's fine.
How much would you estimate
have a
SharePoint would cost annually?
Well, it's included in the Microsoft Business subscription. So
Is there a
Microsoft
limit, like a file storage limit?
I haven't bumped up against a space limit, but I would expect that you'd probably have to buy extra space if you needed it.
And do you find it to be slower?
Well, it depends upon what you're trying to do. Slower. My clients haven't complained at all. The ones that are working off of SharePoint now, they're typically working remotely. One office in particular where hardly anybody comes to the office anymore. So they transitioned out of the office, and at first we were having them connect remotely to a computer in the office that would then access the files on the file server. Got to a point where I said, this is just kind of redundant. Why don't we just put this on SharePoint, and your computers at home can access those files directly from the cloud.
But you have to buy another license for.
No, that was all included in their Microsoft 365 for business. So they pay, I think it's $15 a month for each user for the whole Microsoft 365 suite, which gives them 1 terabyte per user for the user's OneDrive storage. And the SharePoint for the company, I don't recollect that there was any extra fee for that. It seems to me like that was incorporated into the Microsoft 365 for business, that it automatically included SharePoint. Now, somebody might correct me on that, because it's not like I set that up every week for another client.
Your clients don't have any concern about their data being out there in Microsoft's control, that if Microsoft gets hacked, even though they didn't do anything wrong, they just released a bunch of client info?
Well, no, because this is a industry standard accepted thing, and they are comfortable that, and they see the security that I've implemented. It's all, complex passwords and 2-factor authentication behind it. If they were to wind up in court being sued about a data breach, and we say, well, we're using Microsoft's product the way that Microsoft intended and documents for it to be used, and that is reasonable due diligence. And I think that's completely defensible, as opposed to something that is what kind of hybrid and homegrown system that's not a industry-wide accepted practice.
My clients, I obviously have very different clients than you. When I proposed putting the data on the cloud, they put their foot down and said, I want to see where my data is. So if you want to put me in the cloud, you go take me to the server and show it to me. And now these clients, you know, they're in their 60s and 70s. They're a bit old school.
Yeah.
And they're saying, if I can't see it and it's not on my property, it's not leaving this building under any circumstances. I even once asked, could I take this workstation home and make a video out of it? He goes, I'd rather you didn't, because somebody could see the serial number on something and then trace that back to us. Now, you and I both know that's not true, but my stance was, all you have to say is yes or no. I don't need a reason.
Right.
Because the reason wasn't an issue, but I'm not going to twist his arm or correct him. I asked, I got my answer. Doesn't matter why. So if the client says, I don't want to be on the cloud, no problem.
I had a client recently say that. That's fine. I don't argue it with them at all.
Yeah. But I haven't had a client want to be on the cloud. I had one client get switched to the cloud and they were so ticked off. It was costing them about $1,000 a month for storage and bandwidth on Azure. And everything was dog slow.
Yeah, I tried Azure for backup for an office, and that got really expensive really quick. It's like the old what was those mortgages back in the 1980s, the ones that would increment up each year. Graduated payment mortgage, something like that. You start out really low and then just got crazy expensive, and that's the way that the Azure backup system was. It was really difficult to protect.
Mortgages. Yeah. I was going to Google it and it just came to me. Your interest is only 2% for the first 3 years, so you can afford this house you can't afford.
Yeah.
And then it became hedge funds and oh boy. I want to offer an invitation to Scott, Ask Your Computer Guy, Scott.
And
Mike's unboxing reviews and how to. Gosh, I feel like I just left somebody out. If you guys want to pop in and join us here on StreamYard, we have room for guests. You're more than welcome. Just let us know in the chat. And Mara in the background, she can send you an invite. You can just pop in. You don't have to install any software. And you're welcome to stay as long or as short as you want. And we can have a full Brady Bunch in here. Mara said she already sent the invitations. Oh, well, there you go. She's ahead of me. So I just wanted to put that out there. And Gary Weisenberger's mentioning SharePoint can be configured to be both HIPAA compliant and FINRA compliant. It also supports on-premises deployment. Well, that shows you what I know. Okay, I've never used it, but good to know. And Scott is saying, oh, he's going to start supper with the wife maybe next time. Yeah, we'll have you on individually as well. So, and Mike's Unboxing says, thanks for the offer on the invite. Well, the invite's there, and you know what? You guys are welcome here anytime, and we're glad to have you joining us in the chat. We appreciate you. And great content makers there as well. If you guys haven't checked out their channel, you're missing out, because, not only Doug and myself are working computer technicians that make practical content. The problem is finding folks that do this for a living and also make content is what's a tough find, let me tell you. And so anytime I find them, I definitely want to bring them in, huddle together, because we're not competing with each other. We're all fighting the same battle together. And that is, we're helping end users. We're trying to run a business. I guess Mike's Unboxing, he's retired, so he doesn't count. But based on how old he looks, he must be recently retired. So he's still sharp as a tack when it comes to, staying on top of all the tech. When you're not doing this for a living, it's very easy to get left behind and not realize how much you've missed. And it's when the clients present these unusual scenarios that other techs will say, we've been doing that for a year. What are you talking about? There's always going to be stuff like you mentioned, SharePoint. I don't have any experience with it. I've never needed it. And if I had a client where that solved a problem for me, that's, obviously something I would learn at the time. But other technology like motherboards and processors and storage and Wi-Fi and networking, that stuff just keeps moving so quickly. We're just here to try and keep you guys on top of it and share with you some of the trials and tribulations of running a computer repair business, the challenges and obstacles we face daily, whether it's customers themselves or the software or hardware we have to resolve. And getting that real world from the trenches stories, I think, for me anyway, is much more valuable than somebody sitting at home making an enthusiast video for fun. Nothing wrong with it. It's just there's no shortage of that kind of content here. And that's why I really enjoy bringing other peers onto the channel. And often, not only am I learning like about SharePoint, which I'm sure Mara knows everything about. She's from the corporate world with big high-end, Cisco and Juniper networking equipment and stuff. I will never work with. Well, I haven't had any need to work with it. And the fun part is when myself and like Doug, for example, when we disagree, and that's why the video has us boxing, because at the end of the day, we do what we have to do, what we feel is the right process to accommodating whatever the needs of the customer are. That's including how much time it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. And so Doug and I may kind of bang our heads together, or I'm saying, no, I wouldn't do this. I do it this way. And it's fun. It's not to convince him to agree with me. That's not my goal. And I enjoy hearing other people's perspective. Like if there was a video game you could play where you had to get yourself out of a situation and you were given a certain number of materials, and your goal was to use those materials under a clock to get you to resolve the situation and move to the next level. And there were multiple ways of using those materials, or some of those materials in a creative way. Oh, I love stuff like that. I love that I could use different materials or in a different order, and Doug could use, the same options, but maybe he chooses different materials in a different order. And at the end of as long as we got out of there under the time limit, I think that's pretty darn cool. It's very creative to see multiple ways to resolve a problem. And it's something I really liked about like Jackie Chan movies, where when he was fighting, he would use what was around him in his environment in a clever way that I never thought of before, using a chair, for example, as a joust and a shield, using a wall to be able to leverage himself to, say a car's coming at him and he's up against a wall. He can kind of lift himself up with his feet up against the wall, let the car hit the wall, and as gravity pulls him down, he's now on the back of the car instead of getting run over. Now I realized all that's choreographed, but it's inspiration to look around, to use your mind, and to come up with the solutions. And that's why quite often in this field, that's how we learn, and why very few of us, unless we were taught at the same place or in the same way, often don't agree with the process, but we do agree with the end result. Like we agree making backups is important, but how Doug goes about it and how I go about it, completely different. And I share the information because it might be like ChatGPT. It might be a scenario where Doug says something to me, and that's 75% of the information that gets me, oh, I would just change this little bit, and then it makes me a better tech. And hopefully that's what we get from it, if nothing more than that's interesting. It can be the catalyst to taking the next step, whatever that means for each individual. And I just really, if you can't tell, I really enjoy not only the different ways Doug or anybody else that works in this field goes about resolving the problem, but the challenges of their customers are different than the challenge of mine. So all of this is part of the business. It's part of what we deal with. And depending on where you live, you might be in an area with a lot of accountants. You might be in an area with a lot of real estate agents. that may, your environment may be a part of what defines what you start specializing in. And, recently, for example, a client called me and said that their server was getting slow. And they have an older Synology rack-mounted 4-bay server. It's about 6 years old. And I said, well, it's about 6 years old. We probably should replace it. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, it's just file sharing. We're not running any applications. It shouldn't really take that much. And I said, let me connect remotely. Show me the slowness. And he's in a piece of software called Drake. You know what Drake is?
Nope.
Drake is tax accounting software.
Okay.
And it's got a big database. And for whatever reason, it doesn't auto-maintain the database. So long story short, I'm testing the NAS, I'm testing the network. Everything is running exactly like it should. It's all green lights all the way across. So I said, I can't replicate what this problem is. Can you show it to me? Mm-hmm. He opens up Drake, and Drake has its own sort of file explorer within it. And he's trying to move files within that built-in Drake file explorer into something called the DDM, or the Drake Document Manager. Oh, this isn't a NAS problem. This isn't a network problem. This isn't a computer problem. This is a Drake database problem. So I said, when's the last time you compacted this database? And he says, I completely forgot about that. I don't do it very often. I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So do you remember how to do it? No. You don't make any notes to yourself about it? No. Okay, well, I'm going to put a note on your file. Okay. We're going to hit Gemini or Copilot, ask how to compact a Drake database, or DDM, Drake Database Manager, or Document Manager. And I said, I want you to click here. Now I'm watching remotely, letting him control it. I'm like, okay, here's what it says. You click here, and it's all coming back to him. He's had the software over 10 years. That means he's only done this 4 times. He can't remember. I've never done it before. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make notes. So that worked. Okay. And I'm just opening Notepad. Okay. Click here, click here, click here. Compact the database. Takes 3 minutes. It's done. Try this whole thing again that you showed me was slow. Now try it. Lickety split. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to write the date down. So we'll say July 2025. I'm going to set an Outlook calendar reminder that 1 year, July 2026, if you've been able to go 2 years without a problem, then if we do this once a year, we should never have this problem again. And I think this whole process that we were planning to replace the NAS needs to be canceled. Even though the NAS is 6 years old, why fix it if it ain't broke?
Yeah.
I had another client say their Outlook was really slow. I said, when's the last time you compacted your PST file? I forgot about that. He says, he's technically savvy. He's like, I'll take care of it. Calls me back. He says, Outlook's fast again. Okay. Now, why isn't this automated, right? Why isn't the software that uses the database automatically just coded to compact the darn database every so often? Why does it require the end user to do it? I think it's job security is what that is. Any questions here in the chat room, or do you see anything, Doug, that you want to address?
I was just glancing over to see, and don't have anything jumping out at me at the moment.
Scott says, Drake is a slug for several of my Tax Pro clients. Well, what's funny is I have another client that uses Drake. They've never had a complaint, not once. So I don't know if it's the scale of the business or.
And therein might lie the reason why it's not automated. It seems to me a lot of software is not automated for maintenance, although some of them will remind you or trigger a reminder, or some of them can be configured to remind you to do something periodically.
Right? It doesn't necessarily have to auto run, but it'd be nice if it asked, because people forget. They do it so infrequently, and they want to take care of everything themselves. They don't want to pay me to do it. And then they go, oh, that solved my problem. I'll remember that for next time. And next time doesn't happen for 2 years. And they have completely forgotten they've even experienced this before. So by just making notes and setting reminders, I take care of it. But, you know, it sure would be nice if the software would have some kind of an alert to it. It certainly will do that if you deactivate it. It certainly knows when that happens. You need to renew your subscription. They know when that's coming up. David Graham contributes $5 in Super Chat. He says, wow, I have a great life. Thank you, Carey, for being a part of it. Oh, that's awesome. I hope everybody's having a great life. I don't think I can warranty return mine. They're not taking them back. Let's see. I'm looking through the chat. If you have a question for Doug or myself, this would be a great time to ask. We're about ready to wrap it up for today. I want to thank Doug because I asked him last minute if he would join me today. And to my surprise, he said yes. So thank you for that. I normally like to give you about a week's heads up. And I failed.
No, I think you can do that on short notice when it suits you.
Well, I figured the worst he could say was no, and we'll schedule it whenever he's available.
Yeah.
Got lucky. I'm waiting on some things to arrive in the mail, and they're not here yet. So otherwise, we might not have had a show today. So I really appreciate you being available for us.
Now, actually, when you asked, you sent that through yesterday. At that time, I was still on my plate to go up to the cabin today. And then probably within 15 minutes after I saw your email, I had another situation came up that was like the final straw, because I already had 2 strikes against going to the cabin today. And then I had a third one come up, and I said, I'm not going to go. So that's when I replied to you and say, yeah, let's do Wednesday.
Well, I certainly don't want to keep you from the cabin, but you can live stream like this from the cabin.
Well, yeah, and I was going, and I was thinking of it. The problem was that if I went today, I wasn't going to be able to leave from here until 1 p.m. So I wouldn't be up there at the time of your stream. So I'd have to stay around here. And then if I did it tomorrow, well, I had a reason why I needed to come back and be on the road around 1 p.m. So
it's not like I couldn't postpone the show a little bit. I mean, if you weren't going to be up there.
Yeah, that was just getting too complicated.
Well, but when, like, approximately how far of a drive is that for you? An hour?
2 hours.
Oh, okay. So it's like me going to Flagstaff.
Yeah. If I drive straight through, it's an hour and a half, maybe an hour 40, but I usually stop a couple times.
Daco wants to know when we're going to retire. I have no plans to ever retire.
Yeah, I have no plans. Underscore plans. And what does retire mean? Compared to the way I worked 20 years ago, I am retired right now.
I agree with that. But part of that's for me.
I hustled.
Yeah. Well, part of that is the hustle's been done. I don't have to do it anymore. I've held on to what I worked for. In other words, clients, giving them every reason to stay with me. And sometimes they leave. There's nothing you can do. But overall, I have enough clients to carry me forward indefinitely. And I don't have to go knocking on the doors, getting more clients. That was the worst part of it. And then I used to have to get in the car and drive over there, which of course you would have to do to set up a new client. But once they're set up and remote access is enabled, unless I have to turn a screwdriver, everything can be done sitting in the chair. So it's so much easier today. I'm kind of glad that it worked out that way, because I don't know how lazy I would be if I was in my 20s today and it was this easy. I don't know how you retire from being already retired. It's sort of like, where do forest rangers go on vacation to get away from it all? You're already a forest ranger. When you go to the city? Anyway.
New York.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's see. David Graham says he sometimes does work, but at his discretion. Yeah, that's even better. And you have no pressure. You just do it if you feel like it.
Well, a little more significant answer, I guess, to Daco when he said, "Were one of you two going to retire?" is that I quite a long time ago stopped recruiting new business, and when a client will like sell their business or retire or switch circumstances somehow to where I lose them as a client, I wouldn't put any effort into trying to replace that client, and I would just work less and control my living expenses, and so that I would have more leisure time, uncommitted time. That was before starting YouTube. Now I don't really have that same sensation, but at this point, I feel like my business is kind of on autopilot. So no longer trying to recruit clients, although I still get new clients once in a while typically by referral.
Yeah.
But it feels like a semi-retirement to me, and I expect that to continue. I expect my client load to continue dwindling down. And so I don't think there'd ever be a cutoff point where I could say that, okay, now I'm retired. And what does that mean? Does that mean I'm not going to service clients anymore? Maybe the only way that could happen is if I turn over my whole client load to somebody else in particular and actually stop servicing them. If I was no longer able to work, I suppose I'm off hiking and I fall down a mountainside or something and lose both my hands, I probably would stop working in this business.
Is that what it would take?
Yeah, if I can't operate a keyboard and mouse, would that get me out of the business? I mean, there are ways to
You could drag and dictate,
operate
right?
a computer, but yeah, do I want to mess with that? It'd probably have to be I can't work for some reason.
I would just feel like I would feel guilty, I guess, that I am consuming and not contributing if I'm not working. In other words, if I'm creating trash and I'm eating food and I'm consuming media and I'm not giving anything back, I would just mentally, I would not be in a good place. I would wonder, why am I here? If I'm here just to consume and then die, it's got to be more than that. And I've decided that that's up to me. In other words, I don't need somebody to tell me what I'm here for. I need to figure it out on my own. And I know there's a reason. And the minute that reason goes away, I think depression and guilt will set in. I'll feel lazy. I'll feel like I'm not pulling my weight. I'll feel like my life is being wasted and I should be doing something with it while I can. Now, if such time occurs where I'm alive, but something happens, maybe I lose my vision, maybe I get really bad arthritis and it limits the kind of work I do, I'll still try and figure out, what can I do? Even if it means I have to change it, I still need a purpose. It's so important to me. When I hear about these younger kids who don't want to work, it seems like misery. It seems like jail. Going to work is one of the most fulfilling experiences that life has to offer. If you enjoy your job and you get a sense of fulfillment, it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning and to look forward to your contribution, to making a difference.
That exact statement, a reason to get out of bed, that's a conversation I had with a client that has just sold his business, his print shop business. He's 87 years old. And we had this exact conversation, and he's saying he's got to find a reason to get out of bed. He loved the work that he had been doing, and I don't know why he finally decided to pull the plug. He looks to me like he could continue going if he chose to. But he made the comment that a few friends of his have died within a year of retiring, and he knows very clearly he's got to find a reason, a passion to get out of bed every day. And that is the passion that I feel for what I do. Now, when I look at other people who are working and it's drudgery to go to work every day, I totally get that they want to retire, because going to work is not what gets them, well, maybe it gets them out of bed because they got to go, but it doesn't get them out of bed energized and wanting to go do it. Now, Scott asks, what if you just lost one hand? Yes, I would keep working. I would keep doing this if I just lost one hand. I can afford one.
Hey, it didn't slow the drummer down of Def Leppard. You ever see that guy drumming a
No,
rock
I'm
and
not
roll
aware
with
of
one
that.
arm?
No.
Unbelievable. And you know what his attitude was when they interviewed him? They said when he got into his car accident and lost his arm, life was too easy for me. And God
This gets
decided it was time to challenge me. And
Yeah.
he customized his drum kit so he can keep being the drummer as he was before, and continues to play for the band as the drummer. And if you go and look at any Def Leppard videos, watch the drummer. You would never know he's playing with a deficit, but it doesn't slow him down. Or seeing a three-legged dog, they run just fine.
Oh gosh, yeah. They don't know.
They
don't
don't
care.
hold any resentment and feel sorry for themselves. They're back at it. Let's go. So I try to be inspired by dogs.
There you go.
They always go, oh, he's 12 years old, but he still thinks he's a puppy. I want people to say that about me. Maybe not the 12 years old part, but you know, this guy still thinks he's a kid. Good.
Does the Scott's got to push it? Oh, this is the other Scott. Bus accident. Oh, was that the Def Leppard guy? Was it a bus accident?
Yeah, I think you're talking about Rick Allen at Def Leppard.
All right.
But if you Google like a interview,
I've got it up. I pulled up a tab.
it's inspiring. It's
check
very
it out.
inspiring. And then you listen to him drum.
Yeah.
How's he doing that? How is that even possible? And he has a very good attitude about it. You know, he's just like, life was just too easy for me. And this presented a challenge. And he sure as hell makes it still look easy, if you ask me. He doesn't look like he's struggling. Anyway, it's just a fascinating story and an unusual one. You know, sometimes things that can happen to people in bands ends up in death or the end of a career, like the drummer for Led Zeppelin, John Bonham. Sometimes there is no second chance. And for him to be able to see that as a second chance instead of taking it as a smackdown, he just got right back up on his feet, figured it out, and he's back at it. I love that story so much. And despite not being a drummer, I just think it applies for attitude and challenge and obstacle. And we can't control some of the challenges life will throw at us unexpectedly that we didn't plan for. But if you find a strength from within, you can always overcome, or at the very least, you know, go down fighting. I'm not waving a white flag. No, you're going to have to take me to the last. That's just the way I was raised. You know, you just, at the very least, you go down fighting. So I'm just looking for any last questions here. Let's see. Ask Your Computer Guy. Scott here says, if you guys love music history and backstory, check out Professor of Rock. Oh, he's very good. In fact, he does great research. He has some great interviews, and I've been hearing him on the local radio station on certain nights. So good for him that he's started his YouTube and then reached out and got into radio. I think that's really neat. And it just shows you how somebody can follow their passion to, you know, do interviews with bands that perhaps aren't the most popular bands, or maybe they are, but they're something he grew up with and they mean something to him. And he genuinely wants to talk to them. He feels lucky to be able to talk to them and does his research. He's prepared, knows what he's talking about, doesn't embarrass himself in front of the artist. And, you know, we've seen interviews with artists where they go, hey, I really like your song Rocket Man, Billy Joel. Billy Joel's like, I didn't sing Rocket Man. And, you know, did you know who you were interviewing? So he doesn't make any of those kind of silly mistakes, and he really appreciates, you can tell he enjoys what he does. And to see him branch out of YouTube now into radio, well, he's still doing YouTube. He's gaining popularity. It's an excellent recommendation from Scott there. Professor of Rock. It says Scott says his passion for talking about music and the artists is what keeps him coming back for more. It's not the facts, but the way he expresses it. I think he does a very good job also touching a little bit on the artist side of things. Like, wow, that must have felt great when, you know, the audience reacted this way, or this song took off in this way. Tell me how you felt when that started being played on the radio, or tell me how it felt the first time you heard your song while you're driving in the car. Like, explain that to us. And I love questions like that, questions that we will likely never be able to experience ourselves. And, you know, they weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They earned that. And not many artists will make it to the radio. And yeah, I always wonder if an artist is walking through the grocery store and their song is playing in the background, or they're driving in the car and the song is playing on the radio. Do they change the station? I've heard this song 10 million times. I don't want to hear. Or are they like, wow, that's really cool. They're playing my song 20 years later. It's still on the radio. And I'm sure for every artist, it's different. But that's why I think it's a great question. And he asked those kind of questions. He says it also helped that Professor Rock has a background in music history as a producer. Does he? I thought he was just a fan. He has a deep insight into many of the stories, including old interviews. Yeah, well, you sold it. Yeah, Professor Rock's very good.
Well, I had I had a really interesting troubleshooting story with an internet down condition, and caused me to cut my trip short at the cabin. Client, actually, they called me while I was driving up to the cabin on a Tuesday, towards the end of the day, and they said Comcast is coming out. They've been talking with Comcast and working remote with them. They couldn't solve the problem, so they're sending a technician out. They had a window up till 10 p.m. He was calling me, isn't that strange? And well, anyway, they wound up showing up before 5. The technician does some checking around, and he says, this 8-port network switch you have here is defective, and it needs to be replaced. And I know it's defective because all the lights are flickering on it, and they're not supposed to do that. Well, yes, they are. It's normal operation. So anyway, he passed it off on your network guy. So I packed up early the next morning and came back down. Started doing some troubleshooting. No, it wasn't that switch at all. But when we disconnect that switch, then the Wi-Fi would work from Comcast. There are actually 2 network switches, a 48-port switch that was in a different room, and this 8-port switch. Both of them had to be disconnected in order for their Wi-Fi to recover. So none of their Ethernet would work because all of their computers were connected downstream from these 2 switches. So I start troubleshooting that. I find that anytime I'm trying to do troubleshooting, if I connect either of those switches, the Wi-Fi goes down, and the front office staff who we have configured to work temporarily from Wi-Fi, they are all up in arms. So we start tracking down what computers are connected to what Ethernet cables on the patch panel and the network switch, because nothing is labeled. Very little is labeled. And then during their lunch break, myself and the on-site person who's kind of my contact person, we go to work on it together. And we go through all the Ethernet connections on the 48-port switch, and we narrow it down to one line. When we have that line disconnected, and when we have their old video surveillance router disconnected, then the Ethernet cables will work. And what we found out is that one line, that one Ethernet line going through the ceiling, when we pulled that out to replace that with another line, is we found some kinks in this line in one place where the insulation was broken. So with that line connected into the patch panel into the 48 port switch, and that 48 port switch connected to the Comcast router, not only does it trash that particular Ethernet connection, but it takes down the Wi-Fi as well as all of the Ethernet. So it took a little while to track it down to that, but that was the actual source of the trouble. Now, it also two other things really. The obsolete video surveillance. I'm sorry, the obsolete IP phone system, that they're no longer using that IP phone system. It had a line coming in from the router to the WAN port of this device, and then 2 lines that go into the 48 port switch that were obviously separating the 2 subnets of the phone system and the computers. When that device was connected, the router to this device and then to the switch, that also took down the whole system. So we bypassed that. We took it out and ran the Comcast line directly into the correct port of this programmable network switch. You can't just plug it into any port. It has to be the correct port, because that's a smart switch and it's programmed to bring in the upload on that port. Then also on that 8-port switch, remember the Comcast said that device was bad, and it turns out that connect to either of those, it would take down the Wi-Fi. So that other switch, one of its connections was to a wall port, an Ethernet wall port that was single wall jack, labeled video source or video out or video connect, something like that. I said, well, what's that connect to? He had no clue, no idea what that connects to. But it lights up on the switch. So there's something out there. But when we disconnected, all of their video cameras are still functional. All of their phones are still functional. We have no idea what's out there. But something out there was causing the whole network to be taken down. So it was like 3 problems that apparently were all contributing. Now, it is possible that 2 of those were just coincidentally seemed to be involved, and really it was only the one that had the bad cable. We got to a point where we don't really care, because those other 2 elements, the old IP system, we can just take that out. We don't need it. We don't need to really prove whether that's taking it down, but it seemed to be. And also that wall part, just ignore it. Now, when we ignore that wall part, when we take it out of the mix, well, now we realize, we don't even need an 8-port switch there. Now, they already bought a replacement 8-port switch because the Comcast person said that was the fault. So because they now have a newer model router, which has 8 network ports of its own, we said, well, the rest of these devices that are connected to this 8-port switch can just connect straight to the router. We don't need a switch here at all. So bye-bye to that. So we got them all up and running. Kind of a long way to get about it, but it was quite what? They walked away from the experience saying Doug knows what he's doing. Comcast doesn't.
Well, where I'm going on that story, and I love stories like these. You can tell these. I'm riveted the whole way through. Why did the cable go bad? Were they running it over with a chair over time? Were they stepping on it? Like, why did
it was through the ceiling tiles?
Yeah.
So the device said it was coming from their video surveillance NVR device, which is up above a ceiling tile. Nobody walking on it. The Ethernet going from one port from that device over the ceiling tiles to a patch panel. It's all above.
So nobody's touched it.
Nobody's touched it.
They got rodents. They got rats chewing through it. You see any damage to the cable?
What my client thinks happened is that his opinion of the person who installed that wire is they ran some used cable that they had on hand. because this cable had some kinks in it and had a fray, and there was nothing up there that could have done that I
But it
could
was
see.
working all this time.
It's been working. Now it got to a point where
the
it's just
Keystone
not.
jack that said video source, that's been plugged in the whole time.
Yes.
They didn't just recently plug something into that.
No, I know it's been plugged in because I
And
recognize it. I recall
nobody knows
it.
what it does or where it goes.
Nobody knows where, and it probably goes to an obsolete network camera.
But you know it's plugged in. It's lighting up, right? Or is it a
plugged in,
holder?
or it has some kind of a short somewhere that causes it to show up on the network switch as lit
the
up.
cable, obviously, if both ends of the cable aren't plugged in, right? Oh, I see what you're saying. If the switch is, if it's plugged in the switch,
if there's something out there that the cable itself is frayed, I don't know what can happen with an Ethernet cable that could cause it to light up on a network switch, even if there's no equipment out there.
It's unlikely, but it's possible. And then, there are fluke meters and tools where you could find that cable without having to pull it. But, for $1,500, $2,000 for that tool.
No, there's no point. Just unplug it. And we figured we'd disconnect it. And if there is something that you care about, it's going to show up.
We'll find out.
And it hasn't.
Well, it's like having a switch on the wall and you keep flipping it. It doesn't seem to do anything. And then about 3 weeks later, you get a letter from somebody in China saying, cut it out.
John Williams saying maybe a separate business, the possibility there that there was a different company in this building before they moved into it 10 years ago. That was.
Yeah, but regardless, if it was working this whole time.
Yeah, it's been plugged in.
What changed? Did they move something around? Did they rearrange the office? Did they bring in some new equipment? I mean, I love the fact that you got rid of that extra switch now. You got rid of the extra power cable that it requires. You've minimized and simplified the network. So future diagnostics will be easier and less likely to begin with fewer components to fail.
Yeah. It was working up till 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m. on that Tuesday.
Something
all their systems are working fine. But they insist there was nobody doing anything. Somebody's there very well could be more to this, something that is not being fessed up. It could be,
and it doesn't matter. It's just like one of those.
It's
just like one of those. I wonder what could have caused this, because if we see that a rat is chewing through the cables, we know we need to put some rat traps up there or something, or to watch for that in the future. But if it's just this weird one-time fluke, it's never happened before, you probably aren't going to see it again, even if you knew what it was. That's really bizarre, though. For that to have to be layered like that to the switch in the wall, right?
Yeah.
And then the bad network cable in the ceiling. Pick one. It seems to me that if either one of those were a problem, you would have known about it. So how is it possible they were both a problem at approximately the same time? There's a piece of this story.
There's also that obsolete phone router that it hasn't been causing a problem, and now it seems to be causing a problem, because when we disconnected those other devices, when we found that bad Ethernet cable, so we disconnect it, the 8-port switch still disconnected from the entire system, so it's out of the picture. So I decided, okay, well, this router for the old IP phone system that I'm not completely acquainted with, I'm going to go ahead and try reconnecting it, and that brought the network down again.
So maybe, was there a big storm recently?
No.
I'm wondering if those things, that like the thing that was plugged in the wall and the broken cable, were those also connected into this router in any way?
Well, in line with it, yeah, because the connections was going from the Comcast router to a WAN port on this IP device, and then 2 lines from that going into the network switch. The bad Ethernet cable running through the ceiling was one of the connections on that network switch that goes out through the ceiling. So once, if that bad Ethernet cable for the NVR is connected to the switch, then it is going through that old IP device. Now, could that have damaged the old IP phone router?
That's what I'm wondering.
That's kind of believable.
And then that damaged everything connected to it.
Yeah, and could that have also damaged that wall port that's going to some unknown device? That kind of has merit to it. Could one faulty thing have damaged those other 2 things
Yeah,
that
like dominoes, it cascades.
are unusual devices that I'm not very familiar with? That is more plausible.
When you determined the cable was
all-
bad, how did you make that determination? Did you test it like a continuity test, or you just replaced it?
What we were doing is we had gotten to a point where we said, okay, I'm going to disconnect half of the Ethernet cables from the switch and then see if the Wi-Fi crashes. This was during their lunch break. So then we cut it in half again and eventually narrowed it down to 1 cable, unplug that one, and the Wi-Fi stays up. So I pull that. I want to see where that cable's going. It's not going to the patch panel. Well, now that's unusual. So I pull it a little bit, and I get 6 inches, pull it out 6 inches, and I've got the outer insulation is broken. And then I pull it another foot or 2, and I find 2 substantial crimps in an area that's just open. It wasn't going through anything that would crimp it.
But you don't know where the other end of the cable is?
No, the other end of that cable goes to the WAN port of the NVR.
So did you try putting
35 feet away?
Did you put a those little $8 cable testers?
I got a cable tester. We tested there's the thing. When we use that, what we found is the lights, lights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. On my side, it would skip over number 5. On the other side, it would 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's a little bit of hesitation, but 5 would light up with a little bit of hesitation. That was weird because he got a light on 5. I didn't. Yeah. So that was weird. So then the next thing we do is I took him out to my car and said, okay, here's a 25-foot cable. Here's a 35-foot cable. Here's a 200-foot cable. I think the 35-foot cable might make it. So we ran around the floor to the 2 devices, and everything worked fine. Wi-Fi stayed up and everything. So then we took the 25-foot cable, and we used the bad cable to thread the 25-foot cable through the ceiling.
Fish it through. You taped it on the end.
Fished it through. Yeah, taped it through and pulled it through. We had one point where there was a small hole that it had to go through, so we got a ladder, got up above the ceiling tile to help push it through there. And there were some elements that the wire had to pass over, some wall boundaries and so forth, that it would rise up a little bit. So I'm wondering, if somebody was really aggressive pulling that through, could that have caused problems to the cable? Maybe.
That's usually when it happens. Yeah.
Maybe.
But it's just weird that it would have worked for as long as it did. Yeah. And then without any sort of aggravation, it just decided not to work one day.
This equipment is in a place where it's highly unlikely for anybody to be messing around with in that area without intentionally be going after these cables.
I'm not saying it was a person.
Well, yeah.
Could have been a rodent.
They are in the pest control business.
That would be ironic.
That would be kismet.
All right. I love those stories, man. You got to save those up for us when you're here, because I love that. I'm jealous. I would have loved to have been there and been a part of that experience. That's,
Yeah.
man, I'll never forget.
It was fun.
I was at a client's that I had just onboarded. So we're talking, this client's still with me today, nearly 20 years ago. And they had a 100 megabyte network connection, which was the norm. And I wanted to upgrade them to gigabit. And no matter what I did, I could not establish a gigabit connection. And back then, all you had to do was change they probably had a hub. And I put in a gigabit switch, plugged all the same cables into it. Computers are still connecting at 100 megabit. I'm like, that's weird. It's Cat 6 or Cat 5 cable at the time. It says right on the cable, Cat 5. I look on the patch panel. No, I didn't look at the patch panel's up against the wall. You can't really see behind it. I went to the network jack, to the keystone, took it off the wall. I probably changed the patch cable between the computer and the wall jack. No difference. I pull the, trying to remember the order of events here. This office, they have all the cables coming in through the ceiling. And, there was no patch panel. That's what it was. There was no patch panel. They were just terminated ends that they were plugging into a switch. So this big bundle of cables, nothing's labeled. They just plug in. And I'm looking through the jack, the see-through jack, and I'm looking to see if they're wired correctly. And the first thing I noticed is there's only 4 wires. And I'm like, a phone guy did this. So did he, but it's Cat 5. It's got 8 wires. So now I'm curious. I cut the end off of it and stripped back the insulation. There's 8 wires in there, but somebody painstakingly separated out just the 4 they needed, painstakingly guided them into the individual slots. Like, this is so time consuming and unnecessary because they're phone guys, and phone guys, they only need the 4 wires. That's all you need for phones. And they're like, oh, if you're going to wire the phones, you might as well do the computers at the same time. Did every single one incorrectly. I had to go back and re-terminate all the ends, but I was so happy I didn't have to rerun the cables.
Yeah.
Mara says we've got email. Can I see the phone so I can see the email? I don't know how you thought I was going to check it. Let's take a look at the emails here real quickly. I was so proud of myself when I figured out all I had to do was re-terminate, and then network speed's 10 times faster. And then I would like to tell you that was the last time I ever saw that problem, but I found it again and again, and a third or fourth time. One time I had a dentist office, and the main owner of the business was only getting 100 megabit. Everybody else was getting a gigabit. And I changed his network card. I changed his patch cable. Eventually, I remembered to bring a 100-foot long cable with me, and I ran it to another jack, and he got gigabit. So now I realized it's not the computer. It's not the network card. And the jack was wired correctly. It's got to be in the server room, in the closet. So I go in the closet, and here's what a moron I am. I'm looking at it, and there's all these wires coming in to the switch. And I just start unplugging them one at a time to figure out which one's his. And finally, as I'm working my way down, there's one, they're all blue. They all look alike, except for one is white. One is not like all the others. So I pull it, and I immediately, PTSD, I look at it, there's 4 wires in it. And I'm like, oh, I finally found you. But it was obvious, just go for the one that doesn't look like the rest. And I brought the boss over, and I said, I want to show you something about your cable. I said, do you see how it has 4 wires in here? I go, watch this. And I cut the cable, and there were only 4 wires in it. I was like, wait a minute. I've never seen a pre-manufactured cable that only has, it only has 4 wires. Because I'm thinking it's the same thing. Somebody cut it, and they separated it up. No, this was clearly specifically for phone use. And somebody at some point put it into the wiring room. I didn't do that. Not knowingly. My OCD would have meant I use all blue cables. And I struggled with this because I would only look at it when I was at the dentist's office when I had an appointment. And so I probably had 4 or 5 appointments over the course of a year and a half. And he wasn't complaining. It was just bugging me. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I'd make a note. Okay, next time I go for my cleaning, I'm going to bring a 100-foot Cat5 cable. And that was the beginning of finding it. And then it was just, you know, replace the patch cable in and out in 30 seconds. Took me a year and a half. Let's check emails. Oh, Jim Kenny sent us an Amazon gift card. He says, thanks for the advice. Oh, Jim he had emailed us with a computer problem where the computer wasn't staying on, and he changed the power supply. And, you know, I made a video out of this when I had a similar problem that the local shops couldn't figure out. And what it is a bad power switch. And I said, you know, this sounds like a bad power switch. You don't see it too often. And he's sending an Amazon gift card as appreciation. He says the power button was the problem, and now my computer's working great. That is one of those scenarios. Most computer repair shops will never find it. They'll tell you, you need a new board. They're going to play part starts with it until they figure it out at your expense. And it's a $2 switch. So thank you. First of all, Jim, thank you for your contribution, but also thank you for letting us know that fixed it. That's only the second time I've ever heard of that problem in my whole career, but it does happen. And it's something we're checking. It's as easy as unplugging the front panel header and see if it fixes it. It's the easiest. Just like looking and paying attention, the cable is white, all the others are blue. Maybe I should start there. I mean, it makes sense when I look back on it. It seems so easy and obvious. And of course, thanks again to our friend Buster for his super chat earlier today, joining us out there in Scotland. Thank you to everybody joining us and interacting with us today. It's awesome having you all here. And a super shout out and thank you to our friend DougBetts, who joins us with a last minute notification and accommodates my requests. And I appreciate that. I owe you one or two.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Glad to do it.
And I like that you filmed. That was really thoughtful. You filmed his grandson's reaction to the computer. That tickles. That makes everything worth it. Sometimes it's not in this job. Well, we have to make money to pay the bills. Getting that sense of appreciation from somebody you've helped is priceless. And I live, you know, I don't know what you call that, empathy, but I feel it. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So I hope it brings him a lot of joy, and I hope he uses the crap out of it, because it was just sitting here collecting dust, and that seemed like a crime.
Yeah, no, he's using it, and I'm going to look for opportunities to get some exposure of that back to you in particular.
Oh, it's all good. I mean, I don't expect.
I know you're not asking for it, but
I want to see you use that synology.
You want to see me use this synology?
I want to see you go, I didn't realize how I've been able to live without this. Because I think once you start using it, you're going to wonder how you ever lived without it.
Well, first up to bat for me is going to be for better storage of my client backups, because as I work on client computers here, I keep an image backup of their computers. So they're spread out on various different external drives currently. And
oh yeah, you can combine all that, put it all on the NAS, have them all consolidated
all together.
And you know, with that RAID redundancy, you know, they'll be in a better position of standing the test of time if you need them. I used to do the same thing. I used to make Acronis images. When a system came in for repair, I would image it, and when I gave it back to the customer, I'd image it. So I'd have a before and an after image.
Yeah, I've done that.
But I've never once ever needed them, so I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
But if it works for you, you know, NAS is great because of just the sheer capacity that you have. We have in our studio, we use 4 24 terabyte drives, which gives us a capacity of a little over 60 terabytes. We use 30 of it right now. So, you know, I was watching a show the other day talking about photography and how it's changed over the years. It used to be this long process of development and, you know, expensive processing and expensive equipment that you had to be a specialist to know how to use, to now everybody can just take a picture with their phone and upload it immediately to the internet. They say 5 billion pictures are taken every day around the world. Now, I want you to think about how big each picture is, and over time, how that data set, just worldwide in general, is only growing. It's not getting smaller. And this is the future, right? It's more and more data. And somebody like you, where you're spreading out across multiple devices and you can just put up all on one device. Yeah, I think even if you only used it for that, you'd say, oh, this is way better. And I mean, that's just scratching the surface. So yeah, that's the next thing that's going to throw me, is when I hear your story of what it's like to have it. Because not having it, you don't know what you're missing. When you have it, you'll be like, oh, it opens up possibilities for, other solutions to things you didn't even know were a problem.
I am trying to finish up a last piece of business here. I just did Charlie Purdy. Thank you for the $20 super chat. I had a super chat earlier that I neglected to award the points for, because people get points for super chats among other things. And I don't remember who that other one was.
I'm scrolling through myself to see if I see it here.
I want to say it was a $2.
We have one from David Graham for $2.
Yeah, I think that was on your
Yeah, I can't see
channel.
where they're coming from here in
Yeah, you
StreamYard.
can't there. And my YouTube chat doesn't go back that far, because YouTube doesn't do that. Doesn't go back in chat.
Wait, here's one. Tony Wallow with $1.99.
Oh yes, that's right. It was Tony Wallow. Absolutely.
It's good to see Tony again. I haven't seen him in a while.
So, and thank you again, Tony. All right, I'm running up against a hard stop here. Oops, I did that wrong. Do this again. That, and then hit this button. I don't even have OBS running yet. My StreamerBot and SpeakerBot still operate. That was something I discovered last time we were on. And the reason I don't have OBS open is because it fouls up my camera with StreamYard. And I think that's part of the reason why I need to rebuild my OBS from scratch. There's definitely something corrupt about it.
Yeah, well, you've got your OBS all, I think, convoluted with a bunch of add-ons and plugins.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna,
stuff.
when I redo that, it's gonna be quieter. Yeah, the StreamerBot and SpeakerBot doesn't really do all that much with it, but it's all what I discovered is any of the extra video fluff that I put in with OBS, when I look at process monitor from sysinternals, it's constantly reloading those files, even when I'm not using them. Just it keeps reading those files over and over, even though I don't even use those anymore at all. Now, when I go to try to delete those from my OBS profile, I can delete them, exit OBS, and come back in, and they're still there. That's because my OBS profile is corrupted. I can't make changes to it.
Yeah.
So now I can make changes to it if I never access my main camera during an OBS session. It's my main camera that seems to cause the corruption to the current OBS profile, which is just weird.
Sometimes cleaning house is the best thing you can do.
But here's the next thing. Okay, so here's troubleshooting. I've already started a brand new OBS profile. I copy from the app data OBS folder to have a brand new, and it was working fine with just my webcam. Now, here's another symptom is when I start a local recording in OBS currently, and then I click to stop it, it won't stop. It fails to stop. So I wind up having to end task on one of the OBS things to stop that. So on a fresh OBS profile, I was able to start a local recording and end it with my monitor 1 and my webcam, and it worked fine. But when I added my microphone to the mix, now I have the same symptom where I cannot stop a local recording. Live streaming works fine. So now it implies that there's a problem with this particular microphone and this particular camera when I use them. I've got that troubleshooting narrowed down to that point. So my next steps will be in there. I suspect it has to do with this inexpensive microphone, because about the time that I added this is when I think I started having problems with local recording. I first discovered the problem with local recording because I was having it automatically do a local recording when I do live streams. So I would end the live stream and the live stream would end, but in OBS it still showed stopped recording and it never actually stopped. So it just hung on forever. And when I tracked it down to where, the camera monitor 1 worked fine, when I added the microphone, then I had a problem on a fresh OBS. And say, all right, maybe there's something going on there. So my next troubleshooting step there is to bring that big fat microphone, whatever it's called, in place of this and see if that works okay. But I'm against a hard deadline here. I need to get out of here.
I would just approach this a different way. I would take one of those mini PCs you've got sitting back there. I would plug the camera and microphone and throw OBS on it and just see what happens. That's what I would do. Then I would identify if it's camera and microphone or software on the computer side.
All right. That's
so whatever that's worth, just food for thought. Thank you again.
All right, you're welcome.
And keep us up to date on the OBS. I'll be curious what ends up resolving that. I know you'll find it on your own, but I couldn't resist. I had to put my 2 cents in there.
I know. Thank you, everybody, all the viewers. Thank you, Mara.
Yeah, thanks, of course, to Mara. Thanks to Mark Gaines and Peter VZ for their contributions. Mark Gaines is in Northern Ireland. Peter is in Amsterdam. And you guys rock. Thanks for just hanging out with us today. That's going to wrap it up for us. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go full screen over here. So we'll let Doug say goodbye.
All right, goodbye. I'm going to go ahead and bounce.
All right. Thank you again, Doug.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
And we've got a link to Doug's channel. We'll also add a link to Ask Your Computer Guy's channel and Mike's unboxing, reviews, and how-to, and Planet Cryos. We'll put all those links in the video notes below today's video. A shout out and a thank you to our friends at SCD Keys. It's where I go to get my licenses for Office and Windows. Those links will be in the video notes, as well as the discount code to save 30%. If you guys want to save money and get legitimate, real license keys that are fully backed up and supported, they have 6 months of free support there. It's what I use and it's the price I pay. So you're getting it the same place I get it as a professional. And so thanks for all your super chats and your contributions. Without you guys, well, I'll tell you, this would be a very difficult thing to finance without, selling out to some corporation, which, listen, if it's the right corporation, there's certain companies I would really love to work with, but I guess the feeling's not mutual. And the companies that often want to work with, the content creators want to work with a bunch of other content creators, which means we're just doing the same thing everybody else is doing. And I don't want to do that either. If you have any questions for us, you can reach our email. You can leave a comment under this video, and we'll do our best to respond to your comments in your emails. The email address is also in the video notes below this video. And we also have a message forum where other users can talk to each other, plus ourselves, to answer questions or look for help or just share your passions with others in the community. It's careyholzman.boards.net. And that link is in the video notes below. Emails, free to email us. Comments are free to leave. The message forum is 24/7. It's free to participate. We keep mentioning members because the members are basically our sponsors here. And it's the members who are making it possible for us to keep creating this content as frequently as we are making it. And if you'd like to see more user-created content that's being financed by the viewers, please join us in membership so we can continue our mission unabated and free to review what we want, how we want, without repercussion or retaliation because a company doesn't like it. They're going to withhold money or they're not going to work with us anymore. We go on Amazon and we just buy what we want using the funding that we get from our viewers. And then we're free to talk about it without any dog in the race. You don't have to worry, if I'm biased. Now, there are companies I do like, so I'm just naturally biased. If I get a Minis Forum PC, they're always cool, always. But that's not the only company. So there's still sort of an embedded bias with regards to familiarity with certain manufacturers. And we just, for example, pre-ordered the Orico NAS devices. Orico has 5 different NAS devices coming out. They're like in a metal shell. They look amazing. It's a brand new Orico operating system, which isn't fully vetted out yet, but we went on Kickstarter and we went ahead and bought their second to highest model. So we should be one of the first channels to get it. At least, other channels have already reviewed prototypes. We should be getting one of the early finished models, and we'll see how it compares to Synology and Ugreen and TerraMaster and Asus Store and I'm missing one, QNAP. I'm very curious and I'm hopeful because, well, if you look at the Kickstarter for Orico, it was effective. It was so effective, I ordered one. And we'll also reach out to Orico to see if they'll send us the big 10 bay model. And if they'll send it to us, we'll review it, but I'm not going to buy it. I mean, it's a monster. And we've worked with them before. I can't see why they won't, but at least we're not dependent on any conditions. We're going to review it whether they approve of it or not. And that's more future content coming your way, thanks to our members, thanks to the super chats. This otherwise would not be possible. That'll wrap it up for me for today. Thank you again for hanging out. We'll see you all again very, very soon. Thanks again to Doug Betts, Live Windows Training with Doug Betts. Link in the video notes. Subscribe to him if you haven't. It's great content. That's going to wrap it up. Until next time, bye for now.